army almost of activity coming out of the peloton, ultimately driven on by Cairo Rural, and Movistar did its job. It killed the break.
It did. There's been all sorts of different teams working though, and with just 2 riders up the road, almost every other team has a reason to want to try and get up to them or get one of their riders up to them. So we're seeing Alpecin-Fenix there, along with Joe Dombrowski of UAE Team Emirates. They're still not happy with this, and as things stand now, 139 kilometres to go, it means that there's only just 12 kilometres until we reach the foot of the first climb of the day, and it's a first category. So that's going to be the difficulty for our 2 riders up front, is that even if the gap goes up to a minute and 30, there will be riders from this group behind thinking, well, I can still get across to that. I'm a good climber. I can get up this first category climb and be part of the day's breakaway, potentially going on to try and take a stage victory. So they'll just plough on as best they can. They'll also have to keep something in the tank for this first category climb, though, because it is a long one.
Well, this monastery dedicated to the Virgin of the Chilla, presumably the patron saint of refrigerators. I have no idea. I do have a rather spectacular tourist guide, but it is so voluminous it's a bit difficult to pick them all out. I'll do my best. In fact, I found it. There we are. It's located beneath the summits of the Gredos mountain range in the Chilla Gorge. So it's nothing to do with it's not a Saint Chilla or anything like that. No, it's built in the 16th century in the Hararian style. Good old Harry. Meanwhile, these guys still hold half a minute. Is it worth the candle, Dan?
Well, they've got to try. I mean, they've already put so much effort into this anyway that you know, if you go back into the bunch at this point, you can just feel a bit tired from what you've done, whereas at least whilst you're concentrating and pressing on out front, you've got something to concentrate the mind and an aim to still go for. What they'll be hoping for is that even if the gap remains at 30 seconds, it's not closed by the peloton, it's closed by a handful of riders, which means that they are still in the day's breakaway. So they are in a difficult situation, but at the same time, 2 very big engines. So I think in a sadistic way they'll be enjoying this.
I'm not sure. We're coming up to a rise which will which explains the knockback in the pace that we've had, which has been absolutely relentless. Was it 51.7 for the first hour? Very, very committed, I think it's fair to say. And there have been some rises and falls. We've got one now. This is not, rather unkindly, I think, a categorised climb. It's rather beautiful, isn't it? They'll head around the main body of this hill and then go down into a little vale. There's a slight knoll before we get our first major climb of the day. 2 category 1s today, and it's is it the Centenera or the Centenera? Never quite sure. We will hit the foot of that in about 10 kilometres time, thereabouts. So there is a chance, and it looks like we do have a select group of probably 15 riders who've managed to pull themselves away from the main body of the peloton. Very, very moderately, I must say. There's a chase group of 4, and then indeed come Wanty, which suggests that that's where the red jersey and everybody else is. So we're getting some fracturing here, Dan, and it may well be we do get a new reformation.
We definitely, it's not going to be 2 riders that go all the way to the finish. There'll either be a breakaway that's formed on this climb, or I don't know if we've ever had a stage that has had attacks all day and no breakaway form, and it's just a GC battle at the end. Maybe at some point in the history of cycling, I'm sure somebody will be able to tell me. It's very rare though. Normally the break has been established by now, but yeah, like you said, not far away from the climb. EF Education Nippo, they're riding incredibly well considering they've only got 5 guys left in this race. Court Nielsen out front, they've got 2 riders in that counter-attack behind. Considering Hugh Carthy went home, very impressive.
It is. 37.5 kilometres. Gosh,
137.
Yes, I was going to say. Sorry, I was a bit shocked there that we'd lost terrestrial, but they've gone to a break. So sorry, I was just about to launch it.
I'll be shocked when they get back and there's only 37.5 k's to go.
It's going like that. Warp speed, Dan. Absolutely pulling. I kind of looked at today's stage and I was really worried that it would be taken easy, but it's been anything but. The temptation was there by that big run-in, but I thought, you know, if it's very hot and there's some very, very tired legs, we could get a small group go off up the road, and then it just turned into a day of control. It's been anything but.
I think that was just your fear, as you knew it was a long day in the commentary box.
That is true.
the worst thing in the world when you've got 197 mountainous kilometres to commentate on is that two riders go up the road after 2Ks. I mean, that was never going to happen, but it is nice to see so much action already in this stage. We're almost 60 kilometres through it at this point, and it's still not settled down at all. 16 seconds it's down to, so that acceleration from behind from a number of riders has pulled it back to a degree. But as we keep seeing, it only takes a few riders or everyone to look at each other in the group behind, it can start to go back up again.
Well, we've got some significant descending as well today, and we've got some very, very good descenders within the pack. When Gorka Ezeguirre hit the front in the early break, I was convinced that he was going to have some real fun, especially as it was a descent finish today. Not to be for him, but there will be others of similar quality when it comes to descending. I'm not taking it away from either of the two who are up the road. But yes, it could get to be something of a challenge as we go over the circuit of Gredos that we're looking at right now. I try and sound like I know what I'm talking about in moments such as this. In fact, that's my alma mater. But anyway, the beauty of this landscape, it says, is not only due to the sharp peaks, such as the Agua Negra, but also the Punta Armeza and presumably the Ibis Mountain Goats here. I never know how they... I know how they get up there, but I can't figure out how they get back down, Dan. That's, almost a distillation of what we've been saying about...
some of them are better descenders than others.
Exactly that. It's a distillation of the skills that are required today. There we have it. We'll be welcoming back our friends from terrestrial television in just a short while. And there is a flyer coming over to them, and it looks like somebody in yellow and black. It may well have just been... I've got quite... no, in fact, Trentin. Yeah. Fantastic.
Well, Mark Storer was up there as well for DSM. I think he's the rider looking over his shoulder to see if anyone else is going to contribute to this chase. Is there a Startup Nation also getting involved? I don't think they had anyone in that initial 25-man move this morning, but Trentin's really finding his legs in this Vuelta, isn't he, in all-terrain?
Yep, he certainly is. Just checking on UCI Startup Nation. Nope, they didn't have anybody.
This is painful. Very painful.
Welcome back. If you want pain, you're going to find plenty of it here today. Thankfully not for you viewers, but for those who have been engaged in the day and found themselves really at the thick end of it. This is Monique at the back for Lona Soudal. And look at the pace that we've got. Suddenly we're on a little downhill off a small crest that's not categorised. And then they will be piling into our climb today. Still not there, despite the fact that we have been tested both uphill and down dale. It's a gentle bouche à mouse for the feast that's still to come, and this man might well just set fire to the day. Really, really like Trentin. He's so in control of everything, except for his tongue. He speaks it phenomenally quickly, both in English and Italian. And he's asking for a drink. Just sails by the drinks guy and says, I'll need a drink in a few moments. Get yourself sorted out. He's fantastic. What a character he is, and determined to say the least, and especially after the efforts he's been putting in over the last couple of days. Second into Villanueva, we remind you, behind Sénéchal, and he was first to congratulate Sénéchal and didn't look upset or disappointed, I think because he's had a lot of success within his career, perhaps. Must have been some of that. But he'd been fourth the day prior into Cordoba as well in the heat, so he can sustain just about anything. Heat, peaks, descending, sprinting. No wonder he was trying hard earlier on. Got himself a puncture, unfortunately, and we think that may well have been part of the reason why the original breakaway of 25 riders indeed did not succeed, because he was clearly the man on point, and he's making a big one right now. Here we go. You know what I said about descenders? Strap yourselves in, don't spill your tea, because these guys are going to be going for it, and you can hear the brakes complaining on the motorcycle here, and these guys quite often do catch the powered unit, and you have to work hard to stay away from them. Statements being made on the descent here, Dan.
They are, yeah. I mean, sometimes with those motorbikes, when they bank it over, the footrests that the cameraman has his feet on, they grind on the floor, and it sounds just like a crash. It really makes you jump. I've never actually heard it in a race. I don't think I was ever close enough to the motorbike. I've heard it in filming since. It can be very disconcerting. I'll tell you what, if you're not in position now, then you're not going to be in position for the start of this climb, with this technical nature of the descent that they're tackling now, which pretty much leads them straight into this first category climb. We'll describe it for you shortly. It's long, it's not particularly steep, and that's really the name of the game on today's climbing. We've got a lot of it, but none of it on particularly tough gradients. It's still going to be a tough old day, almost 4,000 metres of climbing in total, but made tougher by the speed that they're tackling everything so far.
Well, we did say that it could be on the descent that you have those bridging over who are particularly good at it, and it looks like we've got a great selection at the moment. Can't see who it is that's coming over from Astana, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Jon Izagiri after his brother Gorka went for it earlier on. Right now, you can see, well, you can't anymore, but you can see the Trentin just piling into that gap into the motorcycle here. The Pico Almazor is what you're looking at. And a whole range of very gnarly looking mountains that we're skirting around. Now, even that modest descent that you saw a few moments ago, no, hold on everybody, it's about here that my dad threw my Action Man Red Devils parachutist off the top, and we watched it float down. I went, that's brilliant, can we do it again? My dad said no. It was too big a climb. Oh, bless him. That was Stanage Edge. This is very different. Yes, the Laguna Grande we'll be seeing a little bit later on. This is the Almazor Peak, and the real name is the Plaza Moro Almazor. Not that I would have known the difference, but anyway, part of this great Gredos circle, these the giants in the sky. Absolutely fantastic. The ultra prominent peak, apparently 1,500 metres. Not quite going that. In fact, am I telling a lie? Are we going above that altitude today? Yeah, 1,550 will be with our second category one, which comes with a category 2 test in the middle of it. First of all, let's deal with what we've got right now, shall we? We're going to come down off this. We still have another little crusty knoll to take before we actually begin climbing. They're playing with us down. This terrain is amazing.
It's a beautiful road, this one, isn't it? I mean, this looks thoroughly enjoyable to do. Not potentially at this speed, no, unless you're on a de-restricted e-bike, but if you're out here in this part of the world just to ride a bike, I imagine you have the best of times. It looks very, I'd imagine these roads are very quiet as well, but surface looks good. Not particularly wide, not particularly narrow either. It looks like spectacular cycling country. All back together though. We've got Kort Nielsen, Trentin and Sivakov have been caught by, is it a group or is it just the string of the peloton?
Just trying to see from the camera, to be honest. They've been shrouded by the trees, which is why we have been having a look at indeed the topography of this area. Is that Van Mark?
It is. I was just about to say that.
He's popped up again. This is him bidding for a place in the World Champs team.
Yeah, I sent him a message this morning saying, I hope you're not too sore. He said, well, I am, but I will make it through today. And he's more than making it through today, isn't he? He's at the head of affairs, going on the attack again. He's clearly got great legs.
He has. Fabulous. And for a big guy, he went down very, very hard. And the man that took him down yesterday only got a combativity award, probably due to that combat.
Well, I have found more out on this combativity award subject. Apparently, it's voted for by the general public, but the only general public who are aware on how to vote are those that are watching the national TV broadcast in Spain. So it's got a slight bias, I think, towards the voting.
The word slight there was not necessary. Yeah, it is getting a bit ridiculous, and we've seen this in the past, and whenever it's to committee even, it's not very fair, but I think they need some kind of guiding hand to just say, look, sorry peeps, but this is ridiculous. Yesterday Jay Vine deserved all he got. He finished on the podium, for goodness sake, after being on the deck. Here goes Sepp Van Mark. Catch him if you can at a moment such as this. He wants to get a little bit of a cushion before he heads up the mountain next, and it looks like somebody from Caja Rural
yes, they're in.
Their level best. They're in momentarily, the break. So finally will their DS leave them alone. He was cracking the whip quite clearly, and they were part of the killing off of the original break because they were so disappointed they'd missed it.
They were, yeah, we jest, but it can be incredibly difficult for the smaller teams to get in a break, and especially at this point in the stage. Actually, once the terrain gets more difficult and they don't have the quality of climbers that the bigger World Tour teams have got, they would have been very upset to miss a 25-man group on a flat road at the start of the stage. But they're now up the road. Sepp Van Mark, don't know who it is from Caja Rural as things stand at the moment with the Belgian out front, but they'll be very pleased to have somebody there.
I would hope it's Paleo Sanchez, I beg your pardon. It is. I think Capedi was busy. Was he busy yesterday? I'm just having a quick look. We'll see. We'll get a name on him in a few moments' time. Apologies if we haven't been able to be more emphatic. Is this? It's surely Sivakop's not. It
looks like it.
It's his day, isn't it? He's still clearly got this as a target. I think that shows great mental fortitude to have the disappointment of being part of several lifeboats that have sunk. He's jumping into ever smaller ones by the looks of things. I do hope that finally he sets sail. 128 kilometres to go though, and we still haven't sorted this out, Dan.
We haven't, no, and just looking at those pictures from the back of the peloton, I cannot begin to describe to you how hard it is if you're there at this point, with all those twists and turns of the descent and the continuous attacking on the front. What happens at the front is it starts to concertina as people want to move up, and so it's faster at the very back of that string at the end of a load of twists and turns and corners than it is at the front, and to just try and keep on the wheel can be agonising. We've just seen there a couple of people not even managing to stay on the wheel. More attacks going off the front though. We've now got Groupama FDJ on the move. Behind that, Lawson Craddock, who's a part of that 25-man group that started out front today. One of the riders there from Team Bike Exchange as well, but I can see this continuing for quite some time to come.
Oh, it's relentless. I mean, it's fantastic because the day is skittling away, and it would be about now normally that we would have started our production come to air. And for those of you that missed it earlier on today, because you're on a terrestrial platform, presumably with other sports, to enjoy on a busy weekend, it has been absolutely enthralling from the beginning. It's been a joy today, and a day that when you see a long one and you know you have to cover all of it, it does strike a little bit of fear into a commentator. You just kind of worry that it's going to get tired. But it's been anything but. It's been extraordinarily lively. We are climbing. 10% beginning almost at the end, and at the end there's a little step beyond that 11%, as you can see. It's not going to give you much respite. I think it's about 200 metres maximum in length, and nice that bottles are being shared here amongst the team and those who will go up. And Bardet wants it, and Caruso tried so hard. In fact, Bahrain Victorious were part of the break-killing moves that went on earlier on, because they were trying to get Damiano Caruso up the road to rekindle his threat to the polka dot jersey. Bardet, maybe he backed out sensibly from part of a break that was not going to succeed, but he must have looked longingly at the 10 that did go off and up the road, thinking, I could be part of that. Well, he might be part of the next incarnation. Let's see. He's certainly in a good place. He's rode over here to get the bottles he needs, so he is gelled up and ready to go. There's a bit of a gap opening up here.
There is, yeah. One of those really difficult things, actually, when the attacking carries on as long as it has, that you end up going through your feed zone. And, of course, you're desperate for bottles when it's hot like this and to top up the nutrition that you've got in your back pocket. So Bardet, although kind of going on the attack there, also had to make sure he collected that musette, collected the bottle that he needed. He'd also got some company in the form of a teammate there, Chris Hamilton, a 26-year-old from Team DSM. Brambilla is here. Lucas Hamilton, I think, is the rider from Bike Exchange. Rafa Maika's been reasonably active as well for UAE Team Emirates. We've not seen a huge amount from him in this Vuelta España so far, but looks like he wants to get up the road today.
While you ponder the Don Louis of the Bourbons, other biscuits are available. I did notice, Dan, that Sepp Kuss, he's on great policing duties at the moment. He was bridging over to that little group that was starting to form as well.
Yeah, he's been brilliant for that team, Jumbo-Visma, today, hasn't he? He infiltrated that first breakaway. He was the biggest threat on GC, and it's him that everyone else was chasing down effectively behind, except for Kakarurao, who just wanted to be in the break in the first place. And doing it again for Team Jumbo-Visma. I said it earlier, but if you've just joined us, that's one of the big reasons why it can be so important to have another rider still up there in the top 10 or 12 on GC, because when big breaks do go ahead, if you've got that person there, then they're often the best placed on GC, so it still puts you on the front foot as opposed to being on the back foot, as this man is. Not a great place to be for Jan Polans, and slightly surprising because he is a quality rider and a great climber.
He did a bit earlier on, and maybe he's paying the price for that. You never quite know when your resources are going to end. And as you say, Dan, it's been so brutal. I wonder whether some of them have misfed. It may well be that they pick themselves back up deeper into the day.
Could be. I think misspeeding wouldn't have had its effect at this point in the race so far. You'd suffer for that a little bit deeper into the stage, but yeah, you're right, it is a long one, and so it's important you start off on the right foot and get the calories and the liquids in earlier rather than later, because if you leave it too late, it can be too late and you really start to suffer for it.
Just looking back through here, you know that I've started now with this is how tough it's been so far. Fabio Jakobsen. I'm not quite sure what the cutoff will be today because everyone stayed largely together for the first 70 Ks, but the gaps are opening up, and some of the quick men are going to need nursing home, of which you have to include Jakobsen.
Yeah, it's going to be a long day for them. Probably I'd say the longest of the race so far in terms of where this group is starting to form on the road. 125 kilometres to go. They haven't done any really of the climbing so far. A small portion of the 3,800 metres in total that they've got to deal with. So to already be in a reasonably small group is going to make for a long and tough day in the saddle. It's not that they just sit up and go steady all the way to the finish. They've got to go as hard, not as hard as they can on each climb, but close to it. You know, as a non-climber, you need to go pretty hard up each one to make sure you get inside the time limit. So a long day in the saddle for those at the back, longer in some ways, and obviously those at the front. Speaking of which, still not done yet. How far through the day stage are we now? 70 kilometres. Wow.
It just keeps
Aru.
Oh, my man. Well, you know, at the beginning of the day, I was talking to Sean, and he said, he asked me what price Aru was, and we do keep a tag on the markets, and he's 200 to 1 today. I would love it if Fabio Aru waved goodbye to what's been a great career. Let's remind ourselves with a stage win. How lovely would that be? But I think dreams and reality are two separate things, but you know, sometimes dreams come true. Welcome back. 12.2 kilometres before we get to the top of the first Categories 1 climb of the day. There will be 2 of them along the way. 4 categorised tests indeed in total. Canal suffering here. We saw Dainese struggling a few moments ago while some of you have been away. Fabio Jakobsen off the back as well, all to be nursed home. And even now that the pace is as it is, the average pace for the day 48.5, and that's well ahead of the predicted average for the day. Predicted average for the day, Dan, what do you reckon?
37
as the fastest. Yes, the midsection will be 35, and it could even be 33. It's been anything but the way that they have attacked it. I know it's been a flat introduction to what is an extraordinarily lumpy day. We've already been over one lump, and as soon as that happened, it did for the breakaway, and we had some riders coming out of the peloton and reforming into a secondary group. Nice to see Micah up here. He's the sort of rider that could actually turn a day like this, 31 years of age now, into something rather special. 3 times a stage winner on the Tour de France. We remind everybody he's had a stage on La Vuelta and finished 3rd overall back in the day, 6 years ago now. But there was a time when he was absolutely on fire, and some of you won't remember, but he took a climb in Sierra de la Pandera about 4 or 5 years ago now. Let me remind myself when it was. 2017, beat Miguel Angel Lopez that day, a man we've already seen as well, looking very good, rekindled his spirit, hasn't he, over the last couple of days. He beat Lopez, Nibali, Chris Froome, Zakarin, Kelderman that day, and held off for a spectacular win. I remember it was ebbing and flowing, and we were just wondering if he could actually get there, and he did. It was spectacular. So yeah, high ground was never a fear to him, but you never know as your roles change. I think it would have been for Trentin today, but maybe they've changed their ideas. They had David de la Cruz up in the early break, and I think that was the main threat to the breakaway's success. They carried him for a while though.
They did, yeah. Sometimes you have to do that, don't you, unfortunately. I was just trying to look at why Jumbo-Visma were riding on the front and trying to spot whether there was anybody of any danger up the road or between this group and the main peloton, or if they were just trying to stamp their authority on things and calm things down finally in this stage. As things stand, there's 3 riders up front. We've already named Aru and Rafael Maikia, the 2 best known of the 3 up front. Van Gils is a good rider, isn't he? We saw him up the road the other day, last man standing from the break on the day that Magnus Cort ended up winning. quality rider. He's managed to find himself in that trio off the front, but if Jumbo-Visma were trying to stamp their authority and calm things down, it hasn't worked. More and more attacks going off the front, and the group's whittling down though, isn't it? We've seen more and more riders off the back of the main peloton that will look to just try and get through this stage. But Jumbo-Visma actually involved in attacking again now.
Oh look, there's a whole load of disquiet going on with work rates that are happening here, and it looks like the fatigue that we've been suggesting might well just come to haunt us. It's clearly dogging some riders already, I'm afraid. So they're busy monitoring each other. Big pinch point that to be. I imagine they thought we'd be coming through in a long string of peloton, but they've got to fit through that gate. A fortified castle as we come through. Just missed it. Onillo, I think. Honorillo. 10.3 before we get to the top. So, who wants it more? Do you remember when Fabio Aru was already being written off, and quite often he had renal problems, which when he finally found out about it, he said it was a great relief, quite frankly, because he'd been wondering why he just suddenly hit a brick wall as far as his career was concerned. And it was almost with the relief of that he became Italian champion to a great surprise. He'd been off form and then came back, and it was kind of a little bit of a situation like this when that happened to him, and it was a success that we thought, oh, he's back, and then he was down again and just never quite got back to the great heights that he had produced. But when he was Italian champion, that came as a surprise. So I don't know, dare I dream that we could have a surprise from Aru today? Not sure. He's with Maxim van Hills, Rafmeijer. Steven Kruijswijk is the man from Jumbo-Visma who's just policing them at the moment, or did a few moments ago. And this looks like a lockdown. Is that now our acceptable group? I think it would be for some. That's not Seppo and Mark doing it again, is it? Surely not.
De Romain Bardet au départ de la 15e étape.
Well, we're with Romain Bardet at the beginning of the day. You have a good night? Yeah, very good night indeed. I'm doing well. It's the last day before the last day, another big stage, and at least it's not as difficult as yesterday. So we'll see how the legs are at the start, and if we can be out front. The Yemi family here to experience the victory. Says, well, these are always good times and appreciated by me and the wider family. Vuelta success already, or is that enough? Or are you going to try something? And will your family make the trip? Said, well, the Vuelta's already a success for me, but I'm not the type of person who just think that it's done and sits back. If I see a day that's tough, then I'm going to have a go. We've got to face Covadonga, others as well. You know, you face some of these challenges, and you just have to make sure that you're up in the front. Well, there's a KOM jersey up for grabs today. Is that your goal? Well, of course, I'll be at the front, for sure. If I'm in a breakaway, then I'll be going for the points, that's for sure. He's scared of Damiano Caruso because he's got a lot of support riders. I think he'll try and take this jersey as well. I think today we can expect attacks from the GC contenders, so if Jack Haig helps at the finish, Caruso might be in a perfect position to take advantage. We shall see. Certainly shall. I always loved the high ground when you look beyond it, down through the mists at the lowlands that are the precursor to it, and then you just imagine having to get up to the top of these peaks, and we're going to be doing that today. Here's a reminder of the Kingland Mountains classification with Romain Bardet on 50 points, 19 clear of Caruso. Tried very hard to get into the break, and we've got something of an accord being formed here with these five riders: Kruijswijk, Bouchard, Baggioli, Verona and Stora again. The evergreen at moments such as this. Sivakov will be looking up the road now and thinking, could have been me that. Should have been me that. I think that's the way he was thinking the other day. It looks from the vegetation here that it is we have lost all wind by the looks of things, and has the stuffing been knocked out of everyone down by this start? It's been amazing.
it looks like it's about to settle down finally, doesn't it, after almost 80 kilometres of racing. So yeah, we've got a number of groups coming together, the bunch spread across the road, trying to calm things down on this first category climb. No one really of any threat to Romain Bardet in this group, nor to Odd Christian Eiking in the red jersey competition. Bardet, I'm thinking about the King of the Mountains, of course, but he does have two teammates there. Mentioned Chris Hamilton, you just mentioned Michael Storer, so a great ride by them. But the interesting rider for me, Carlos Verona, is apparently there for Team Movistar. As things are calming down, they're not Ineos on their way up the road.
Here we are, and let's see. I think it's still got to be Sivakov for them today, but
I think he was suffering at the back. I think this must be Dylan van Baarle. Not surprised to see him. Oh no, Van Baarle's there. Maybe you're right.
Let's see. I was expecting great things from Pidcock. When he got in the break the other day, I was thinking, oh, great, at last it's turned on. But yeah, it was not to be. So Maxime Van Heels, Fabio Ru and Raf Majka are the three off the front at the moment. It's being pursued by Kruiswijk, Bouchard, Baggioli, Kras, Verona. Great pick for today. Hamilton, both Lucas and Chris, by the way. Storer and Brambilla. And chasing on other incarnations as well. But yeah, this is far from over, and with a modest gap of 24 seconds, Dan. We've talked about the descent. It's quite a technical one off this one, and in fact includes 3 peaks within the descent. They're having a laugh.
Well, yeah, the descents are quite technical today, and they're not going to play as big a part on the day as the climbs, but they could play a pivotal part in the outcome of the stage and potentially the GC battle as well. But I'm very intrigued to see Carlos Verona there, the Spanish rider from Movistar. Just on the left-hand side of your screens in the blue for the Movistar team, because I think he could play a pivotal role for whatever their plans are later on in the stage with Enric Mas and Miguel Angel Lopez. We saw the fact yesterday that Angel Lopez was quite willing to put it all on the line and try to take some time back on Roglic. And although it was only 4 seconds in the end, it was the point of it for me that was the big one. They're not happy settling into what's virtually sort of second and third place on GC. Maybe we shouldn't be counting out Odd Christian Eiking and Guillaume Martin, but it is likely that they will slip down at some point in the rest of this race. So to have Carlos Verona up the road, who's been climbing it as well as I've seen him for a long time in this Vuelta a España, that could be a very interesting one later on.
Interesting as well. Ryan Taramay's been very good at putting fires out on behalf of Odd Christian Eiking. And I think, is that Odd Christian? Well, you can't see because the trees are in the way at the moment, but I think that's Taramay, and that's Odd Christian Eiking who's just staying with him as part of this group. So the red jersey is there with Taramay, who did own it. I believe it's him anyway. Doing a little bit of pacing as well. Nice to see. Making good fist of holding onto that jersey into Marche Wanty.
Sorry, first time in the race I forgot to switch my mic back on. Yeah, they've had a cracking race. I said it a couple of times before, but when I looked at their squad and the fact that they're in the World Tour this year, I did have my doubts as to how much success they'd be able to find at the biggest races, the 3 Grand Tours. But although the Tour de France, they didn't have any major successes, at the Giro and the Vuelta, they've been phenomenal, and this has been even better than the Giro d'Italia for them. They took that stage win back there, but here they've not only had a stage win, but how many days is it in red now in total? Must be 5 or 6 since, if you include...
I'll have a look.
Well, if you include the one day they had in the first week, and they must have been in it for the last 4 or 5 days. So very, very successful race for Intermarché Wanty-Gobert. And they are strengthening their squad. They've made a number of signings for next year. Amongst them Alexander Kristoff, who's been having a decent time up in Germany over the last few days. Sven-Erik Bistrom, Christoph's very good friend and current teammate, is also heading over to that team. So they're trying to strengthen their squad. Well, they haven't got an unlimited budget like some of the teams in the World Tour, but I think that the Intermarché part is the Belgian part that sponsors the team and therefore provides the finances. But I think they're getting some more from the French contingent of the supermarket, which will help them no end. But in some ways they don't need the help. They've been very successful here.
They have 7 days in red.
7, is it?
Yeah, 8 at the end of today, if he holds on. And the way they've been riding, don't put it past them. And actually, although there is a lot of altitude gain today, they're pretty steady climbs, and I think he's got a good chance of holding on to it into the rest day, which would be amazing, because that would then give him another day, presumably on the sprinting day, and then potentially wave goodbye to it to Covadonga. That's what we expect. But, you know, surprises happen, and odd Christian, he's very sort of photogenic. He's Hollywood styly, isn't he? When he comes up and beams that big smile, he looks like a race leader.
He does, yeah. He's quite truncated in a few of his answers to the questions, but he certainly looks the part.
Yeah, he could do with bigging those up a bit, just to help us out. How was your day? Great. Anyway, minute and 11 back to Group 4, which is the red jersey at the moment. So there is a lot of riders up ahead of that jersey. And of course you have here, we talk about the red jersey, and it is sitting in with the red jersey that's on the back of Christian Eiking, is the vast majority of Jumbo-Visma. They have got a rider up the road, however, is Steven Kruijswijk, 16 minutes and 40 down, and he would, if this does form into a fighting force of, let's say, 14 riders, possibly 15 if Wout does make it in, that's a good man to have. And Kruijswijk at 60 minutes and 24 would be the best placed of the breakaway. So they're doing it again, Dan. They're playing clever.
They have played it very clever. It seems to be a new strategy that they've got, that rather than putting a stranglehold on the race and really using a lot of energy to control things from the start to the finish of each stage, that they're just playing it a bit clever, letting other teams do their share of the work when there's something else on the line for them, and then putting riders into the breakaway as well. That's what they've been doing today for sure.
Got a flyer. It's not Magnus Court, surely. It looks too small to be him, but you never know. We'll get downstairs and have a look in a few moments' time.
I think it's Camargo, the EF Education. It's going on the attack, but you can see that Intermarché, they're new to this. They've been doing a great job of defending this lead, and to still have 4 or 5 riders around their team leader, Odd Christian Eiking, at this point in a very tough stage so far is already commendable. But they don't need to go after Camargo. He's not going to go anywhere probably to start with, because the gap's at a minute and a half. But secondly, he's an hour and 51 minutes down on the GCN. In fact, there's nobody within an hour and 18 minutes of their lead from that particular team. So they should just let it go, stay controlling things on the front, don't go into the red, don't use too much energy, because at the moment they're wasting it on things like that.
This is fascinating. Well, Pols has made it over, by the way. I don't know whether he's going to act as a foil for somebody else, but Wout Poels would be good for a day like this. He can be quite a diesel, and today that power would be more than welcome, as it would be to add to Damiano Caruso's stage win, if indeed he does go all the way. We're thinking too far ahead at the moment, because the way the day is going, it's far from over, especially with all the climbing and the descending that we've got to do. 4.7 before we get to the top of this test, and it's midway. It sort of eases off, and then it picks up, and in fact we're coming to the most difficult section of it now, Dan. They're not quite on it just yet, but it picks up 8.5, 9. It goes to 11 before a small step, and I think it might even be a downhill section before a last kilometre of 8, peaking at 10 to the line. So it's a really wearing climb, if not overly technical on the ascent. It's got a technical descent off the back of it.
You're right. For me, this is the hardest climb of the day on paper. You know, where it sits in the stage, it's not quite as hard, because it's not at the crunch point. It's where things have started to settle down. But you're right, it's the only part where we've got some gradients that go into double digits, and they come towards the top of it as well. 4.4 k's to go. So, like you just said, we're getting onto the toughest part of this climb now, which might spark some more action from behind, because 40 seconds between the front group of 3, containing Micah and Aru and Van Giels, and the group on your screens right now. So they're midway between the front of the race and the main peloton, are at 1:22, although it's still Intermarché now in control at the front of this one.
When you're in a position like this, and it's a modest advantage, as you can see. We've still got 43 seconds between Van Giels, Aru and Micah. I'm certain that group, or at least some of them, will get over there. Michael Storer has proven ability in this kind of terrain. As part of it, must be a little bit of a niggle to those who also find themselves there. Welcome back, everybody. Just a reminder, if you'd like to avoid commercial breaks, then if you subscribe to the Eurosport app, or indeed the GCN app, then you can find ad-free coverage. The Eurosport app is a multi-sport platform, and the GCN app is dedicated to cycling and has more cycling than anywhere else on planet Earth. So you can fill your boots. This man looks like he may well have filled up too soon. It's Van Hills who was part of that trio up front with Fabio Aru and Raf Maika, and there they are. It's turned into a duo as we stand at the moment. There we are. Oh, and some oaths issued as well. So Van Hills is just going to drop into the clutch of a chasing 12. We're at 37 seconds in arrears at the moment. What about Aru? Dan, it's worth pondering that, or at least reminding everybody that this is his last race.
It is. Came as a massive surprise to, I think, almost everybody, didn't it, that Fabio Aru declared at the start of the Vuelta that this would be his last professional race. An apt race to finish on. It's the Grand Tour that he won a few years ago. I think a lot of the riders that have spoken about it in the peloton have said that it's a great decision that he's made. If he's not feeling it, he's not feeling as good as he used to, or if he's feeling the pressure too much, or he just doesn't have the motivation that he used to, then why carry on if you're not going to be able to put your all into it? It's a tough old sport. I'm sure he's made decent money, or I almost know he's made decent money over the last few years, and he has achieved a lot. It's one of those things when you get success at a very early age, that if you start to wane slightly and not be able to do what you used to, a lot of onlookers will say, well, he's not as good as he used to be, he hasn't had the best career. He's had a great career, it's just that we were expecting a lot more from him. If you start to look at the list of results that he's achieved over the course of not a particularly long career, he's only 31 years of age, as you said, but it's still very impressive. Not many people win a Grand Tour. He's won stages of the Tour, as you mentioned as well. He's won the yellow jersey there, so he can be very proud of what he's achieved as a cyclist. And it's just great to see him on the offensive here, because we feared that he might go home early, and that wouldn't have been a nice way to end his career. He was feeling quite sick, got a fever the other day. His team saying on social media that he was going to try and start the stage and see how things went. He got through that and he's got over it, and now he's at the head of La Vuelta a España.
I'm just looking to see who this is. Sure, not Champazan. Jeffrey Bouchard, perhaps, from AG2R heading off. No, he actually said of himself, you say you're not feeling it. He's actually said, look, the smile's not been on my face for too long now. And he was smiling when he said that. He said, look, now it's back, and it's because I've made the decision, and the decision is I'm going to step off the bike. So he's clearly at peace with it, and I think we need to allow him to enjoy that peace after what, as you quite rightly said, Dan, has been a fantastic career. I mean, Romain Bardet, somebody else who I think you might say still very active, of course, and still enjoying, reinvigorated since changing teams to Team DSM. Somebody else, just continuing that point that you said, Dan, that maybe didn't live up to the expectations, which are incredibly high in France, of being the next big thing. But again, a stellar career, and his isn't over. Great to see that he's refound himself with DSM. It can happen, you get a little kick up. I don't think Aru is going to change his mind. I think that really is it. It'll be end of his career for him. You never know, we might find him joining us on this side of the microphone.
We might well do, yeah. It just depends what he wants to do with his life post-career. I'm sure he'll take a fairly lengthy break from the sport completely, just to take stock, decide what he wants to do, and he's in that privileged position to be able to do that at this point in his life. So yeah, I just hope he finds happiness in the rest of it, and I'm sure he'll relish not having that constant pressure from the team, from the media, from the fans, and from a whole nation, because as you just mentioned with Romain Bardet, France is a big cycling nation, so too is Italy, and so when you get a young rider who performs very well at your home Grand Tour, naturally the first thing you think is, what can he go on to next, rather than appreciating the fact they've just finished on the podium of your home Grand Tour. So I understand that they're under immense pressure as athletes, and it's not surprising to see more and more of them either taking a break from the sport like Tom Dumoulin, or just saying they're leaving the sport completely like Fabio Aru here.
Aru, he speaks very good English, huh? I think it'd be I feel a GCN movie coming on.
Legends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there you go. Make a request, if you wouldn't mind. I'd love to see that, because...
I'll submit a slip.
Thank you, mate. 115 kilometres of the day remaining. Let me just say that again. There's 115 kilometres of this day remaining. It's an enormous day, 198 kilometres, and the gaps that you're seeing on your screen are really not reflective of what we've had so far. I mean, finally there are gaps, but for goodness sake, it's taken such a long time to get there. Still making a good fist of it. Van Gils is in no man's land, but Arrow and Micah hold a minute and 14 advantage. I've got a feeling that the chase, as it is probably riding within itself right now. They are on the top section. There's plenty of ground for them to make up that margin. Let's wait and see. But Wout Poels, almost as I say, goes, and Michael Storer tries to power into the gap as well. He's got a teammate with him, Chris Hamilton. Storer and Poels will believe they can win today. What about Arrow and Micah? Not so sure, but let's wait and see. There's a lot of strength up front at the moment, in front of Red, Dan.
There is, and I just wonder whether they're playing things a little bit badly here, Intermarché, Wanty Gobert. I mean, they're doing a good job of controlling the race, but I know what they want to do is just to ride a steady but high tempo, because obviously with Stefan Kruijswijk up the road, although he's at 16 minutes and 24, you don't want to see it going up towards 10 minutes. However, in keeping it at just 2 minutes and 20 to the front group, which means only a minute and 10 or a minute and 14 up to this group from the main peloton, there's always riders there thinking, I might be able to jump across to that. Sometimes it's best to just let the gap go up to, let's say, 3 minutes. Not much more than it is now, but 3 minutes. At that point, riders think, I can't bridge a 2 minute gap to the strength of that group up the road. It discourages the attacks, whereas at the moment, holding it so close, it's encouraging the attacks from behind. And we have seen more riders slip up the road from the main peloton. I haven't got any names for you, but I'm pretty sure that between the biggest group up the road, the one containing Stefan Kruijswijk, and the main peloton, we have got some other riders in between.
I'm hearing Mikkel Nieve is one of them, and Gorka Izagirre is not giving up the ghost from earlier on today. So Astana with cards to play, and JP Lopez, I understand, likewise from Trek. Joe Dombrowski showing a modicum of interest as well. So let's see how numerous this gets. Looking back, and they're still peeling off, and Trek looking busy today, Dan.
They are, and they've got 2 riders in that group, but I've only got 1 listed down. This looks to be their best placed rider on the general classification, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it is Juanpe Lopez of Trek Segafredo, 16th on GC at 10 minutes. Yeah, he wasn't listed down on the group that I saw on the official website, so that might explain a bit further why Intermarché are riding as hard as they are, because it's not Stefan Kruijswijk that's the best place on GC at 16:24. It is Lopez there, who's just over 10 minutes down.
It is.
So he's not the best place of Trek.
No, I understand.
6:16, yes. But you know what I mean.
Yes, we filtered that.
Thank you.
100 just shy of 114 k's then, and we're 1200 meters from the top. Now this is where you'll see suddenly a gift being offered up to Arrow and Micah, because there's a slight step, then all of a sudden they get the final punch, which will take them over the lip and indeed begin our descent. You can see from the pace, Dan, that we're dealing with some serious percentages here.
We are, yeah. This is the toughest gradient that they'll face over the entire stage, if I'm not mistaken, up towards 10-11% in places, and it comes towards the top of the climb, which makes it even harder. Jumbo-Visma, you're right, Carlton, they've played a stormer again today, haven't they? Got a rider up the road. Had Sepp Kuss up there this morning. When that break was caught, Stefan Kruijswijk found himself up the road. You know, he's not that pawn in the GC in the same way that Sepp Kuss is, but it just means that they've got someone there who can potentially drop back if they start to get into trouble behind, having saved a little bit more energy. But they're not doing any work on the front of the main bunch. They're leaving that to the Intermarché Wanty Gobert team. So yeah, they're saving their matches a lot today, and that's going to see them very well towards the end of today's stage.
Just trying to work out the billowing here. I think it's the helicopter which I can hear up ahead right now on the effects mic, so that explains that. So no wind pickup just yet. You can see from the flags at the side of the road just hanging limp upon their staffs that none really in the offing. They now are just going to head round this little section, and I believe it smacks them with about 10% just at the very last before they actually go over the top. This may well be 600 or so meters. I'm surprised at the moment. I was expecting it for it to be a bit more peaky at the top. I think I might have been beaten by the road book again. It's a big book, you can beat people with it. Not that we're suggesting that. 500 metres then before they get there, and then they will have this descent. And it's worth noting that in the descent there are 3 kick-ups, and one of them is significant. It'll feel like a climb. So watch out for that. And you've seen the sort of roads that we're using going up. They're pretty much the same coming down. I just hope everyone stays safe, Dan.
Oh, we always hope that people stay safe, but unfortunately crashing is a part of cycling. But I'd imagine that everyone will stay upright down this next one, just because the race is still on to a degree, but it's not on in the same way that it would be right at the very beginning of a stage when the brake's establishing itself, or indeed towards the end when a stage win and GC positions are up for grabs. We've got an Intermarché rider up the road as well, so they're playing a blinder as well. It's not just Jumbo-Visma who can play that game, so too can the leaders team.
Yeah, Simone Patilli is marking that out, so we're doing a good job. Here's Micah, just heading for the major KOM points at this point as well. Good man to be up the road. Fabio Rube, just lovely to see him here, quite frankly. I don't mean to be damning with faint praise, but it would be stunning if he comes through for a good result today. Stranger things have happened. Takes the moment just to get a feed bag at an appropriate time when the pace is slow and you can make that take. What's he going to do with this bag? There we are. He's going to hand it over to... there we are, race commissaire. You're going to fine us if we throw these, so I'm going to throw it in your car.
He was trying to give it to him without giving him enough space to go alongside him.
I think he's making a point. There we are. You're going to issue fines. Meanwhile, they've still got a minute or so to go before they get over the crest. And I'm hoping we stay at least for some time at the first part of the descent, because there's always a lot of sorting out. When you come up as a group, Dan, it's always nice to stick with the descent. And I'm afraid it's not going to be in the gift of those of you on terrestrial, but those of you on digital are going to see it all. So there you are. That's the beauty of subscribing to the Eurosport app, or indeed the GCN app. No points for Bardet now. Minute 44, and it's expanding out front. They're having fun, I guess, on these narrow roads as well. If you are wanting to take a rest out from the front, it's hard to kind of drop back and reassemble yourselves. Roads we're dealing with here, you'd probably have passing points if you were going to have a car meeting one way and the other. And almost as I say it, there is one on your screen right now. So yeah, it's not the narrowest road I've ever seen, but equally you could expect it to be a little bit wider. And reparations as well at the top, repairs. That always makes me worried. So here we go. The motorcycle tries to skittle away as they come up and over the top. You see the average pace that we've had today. It's been pared back because of the climb. But of course, we're going to have local speed very, very quick. In fact, there's the average pace. I beg your pardon. I think that was the speed for the climb.
It was the speed for the second hour of the race.
Oh, was it?
The first one, yeah, that's the overall average speed that we're seeing now. It looked like Brambilla had a plan for the descent. He likes going downhill, does Gianluca Brambilla, and he'll be acutely aware that the gap to the front two riders here is expanding quite significantly. Too much for comfort, really, for the group behind. 1 minute and 39 seconds, and it's not as though they looked like they were on their limit going up that previous climb. Fabio Aru and Rafael Maiki here. So Brambilla, I think, determined to keep the pace high on the descent and potentially split the group as well, because that's part of the reason why the gap, I think, is expanded. Because that group is 20 riders behind this one, everyone's been looking at each other. No one's really wanted to commit too much on the front and waste energy compared to other riders. So it's giving 1:49 now. Can't believe it's going up that quickly.
Well, shortly we're going to welcome Sean Kelly back into the commentary position. I suggest that's probably a good idea for Sean to welcome him back when we get reassembled with our friends from Linear. And I'm going to take myself a break, which I'm rather pleased about in some ways, but I'll be locked on laser-like for this descent, because I do love a bit of descending, despite the fact it scares the pants out of me, Dan.
What have you got for lunch?
I've got some grapes and I've got a salad niçoise actually, and
wow.
You'd be very pleased to know.
Got a health kick?
I am a bit actually. I've managed to kick off nearly 2 stone.
Really?
Yeah.
Blimey. Well done.
You won't recognise me, right? There we are. Or maybe you'll think you're looking at a mirror.
I'm impressed.
Are you spooned up with your Zwift promo, Dan?
Oh yeah, I'm all ready.
Good lads. I'm going to salute and let you welcome Sean back. I'm going to enjoy this descent, hopefully.
Thanks, Carlton. Yeah, don't forget you've got 50 kilometres off, but most of it's downhill, so it won't be quite as long as you hoped for.
Tuck it in.
Welcome back, everybody. We're not quite through the halfway point of today's stage, but it feels like we've done a stage already. Not because it's been boring, far from it. Had constant attacks from kilometre zero on stage 15 of La Vuelta a España. And even now, it's not all that settled. If you have just joined us, two riders are currently up the road by themselves. We've got Fabio Aru, the Italian from Quebec and Next Hash, former winner of this race overall, and for company, another quality climber, Rafał Majka, the Polishman for UAE Team Emirates. Behind that is a group of 20, and as you can see, Group 2 there, 1 minute and 45 seconds back, and in that group, the best placed on GC, Juan Pedro Lopez. 16th place he started today at 10 minutes and 8 seconds on Odd Christian Eike. And after that, it's another minute and 47 seconds back to the main peloton, which contains the red jersey Odd Christian Eike, and we think all of the other GC top 10 and probably top 12 as well. I think we can welcome Sean Kelly back into the commentary box. Are you there, Sean?
Yes, Dan, I'm here watching with interest. What a day we've had, and unbelievable the race, the way it's been going today. You can see back in the main peloton there's a lot of riders happy it's settled down a bit, that they're riding at a strong pace, because this was really a killer of a day to start out with. And a lot of the riders made the effort to try and make it in the breakaway. I think they are paying for that effort now, but yeah, it's going to be a real killer of a day, still with, as you say, 107 kilometres still to go to the finish.
Long way still to go, and the majority of the climbing still to go as well. 92.5 kilometres to go starts the next climb. That's the second cat. Long descent from that. Short valley road. Then we've got the next first category climb of the day. Descent off that. Then there's a third cat, and there's a small descent down towards the finish line. So we've done the first climb of the day, and arguably the hardest one, but not the longest. But still a long way to go in today's stage. A lot to be played out here in both the stage win battle, but also the GC battle. What do you make of Carlos Verona being up the road, Sean? That's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is an interesting one, and immediately ask yourself, is there a tactic there? But that, I think, we'll have to wait and see. But I think the way it's going, this race, is just difficult. If you have a team plan, it's impossible to put into action the way the race was going today. So I think there's a lot of things changed on the road for the teams and for the riders. And interesting one there we see on the climb we've just been over. Brambilla was making the pace in the front, and one of his teammates wanted to attack Pedres Lopez, and I think he was called back and just calmed situation quickly.
Well, we'll get back to that shortly, but as you can see, whilst the race is taking a rest tomorrow, we are not. You are able to join Adam Blythe and Manon Lloyd on a social ride on Zwift at 8:30 p.m. tomorrow time. That's CEST, so you'll have to take an hour off if you're in the UK and on BST. It's a ride along and a chat, a text chat, so if you'd like to pick the brains of Adam or Manon, please feel free to do so, and I'm sure they will get back to you with their opinions on what's happened on the race so far, or any other things that you want to ask about cycling for that matter too. Well, the gap's holding reasonably steady, but actually between the front two groups it's coming up towards the 2-minute mark. And that is a sizable gap to give climbers of the quality of Fabio Aru and Rafał Majka. As I said just before Carlton went away for his lunch, it didn't look like they were absolutely 100% on the previous climb of the day. In fact, they looked well within themselves going up it. Spelt the end for Van Gelso, the Belgian from Lotto Soudal, not able to keep up with the pace of the front duo. Had been the three of them for the early part of the climb. And this is the state of affairs in the group behind, Sean. I think this is the slight uphill within the descent that they're having to tackle, and it's far from organised.
Yes, and exactly the same situation we see yesterday with the break. When Bardet was there, and I think he was one of the men was being looked at as the danger one, and there was a lot of that looking, waiting, playing about, attacking, and 2-3 riders going ahead, and then the stronger riders, the moment it kicked up, they were able to come across them very quickly or get very close to them, and they play that out for a long time onto the final climb. And in the meantime, there was riders there to pull a nice advantage out front, and it looked like that they might be able to continue on. But it's going to be a real interesting one here with the two up front, because Micah and Aru, if they're on a good day and you give them that number of minutes advantage, it could be difficult to take them back. But still, 105 kilometres, a long road to the finish. But going back to the Trek Segafredo there, as I was talking about on the previous climb, Brambilla was making the pace on the front, and we see that the rider who's best in GC at just over 10 minutes, Joan Pedro Lopez, he wanted to go on the attack, and I was just saying to myself, what's he doing? Immediately we could see Brambilla going to his radio and calling, and then he was told to knock it off immediately. Did he expect to ride across on his own? You'd wonder what those guys are thinking about. I know he's a young rider, but Brambilla, the experience, and I think stay in the group, keep on working, try and get the rest of this big chasing group breakaway, get them to contribute here, and just hold the two riders out in front, or maybe just close down on them gradually, which is not happening for the moment.
Now, only 24 years of age is the Spaniard Juan Pedro Lopez of Trek Segafredo. And at the other end of his career is Gianluca Brambilla, now 34 years of age. I must admit, I was quite surprised to see how old he is. I know he's been around a reasonable length of time as a pro cyclist, but still looks very young, as a lot of these pro cyclists do. But yeah, you'd imagine Juan Pedro Lopez, in his home Grand Tour, only his second Grand Tour in his career, will be very excited at the prospect of where he could get himself up to today. Starting the day just over 10 minutes down, it's already to the point where he's starting to look at a top 10 on the virtual classification. So you can see why he's keen, but from that point of view, great that he's got a man with such experience alongside him to guide him. So the same team on the front. As things stand, no real need for Team Jumbo-Visma to do any work, and they haven't really for the entire stage. Movistar, though, have. They did have a rider in the initial 25-man group, but with Sepp Kuss also in there, it forced them to chase, and that would have taken a fair bit out of them, because they don't have that many riders left to do chasing. Lopez and Mas obviously aren't going to do anything themselves on flat roads, so it left just Oliveira, Rojas and Carlos Verona to do the chasing. In some ways, even more impressive that Verona's managed to get himself into the day's breakaway, as it looks like things are now. I was having a look earlier, Sean, at the teams in this race who've already taken a stage victory, and there aren't many of them, because a lot of teams and indeed riders have been doubling up. Had 3 wins apiece for De Koning Quick-Step and Team DSM. 2 riders within those teams have taken 2 each, Michael Storer and of course Fabio Jakobsen. Jumbo-Visma have got 2 with Roglic. Alpecin-Fenix had 2 with Jasper Philipsen before he went home. Magnus Cort Nielsen's taken 2 for EF Education Nippo. Intermarché early on in this race obviously took their stage win, and they're now in the red jersey as well. And the only other team to have taken a stage win over the first 2 weeks or 14 stages is Bahrain Victorious with Damiano Caruso. And it doesn't really take a maths genius to work out that means at the end of this race, which only has another 7 stages if you include today's, there are going to be a lot of disappointed teams, Sean.
Yes, and the problem is with the teams who have got a GC man, they try to just keep everybody around that GC rider and not allow anybody into the breakaways, and then suddenly your GC men start to slip down in the rankings, and then there's a bit of a change of tactic within the team, what way they ride, and putting riders into the breakaway. So you can understand the teams looking after a leader, because it's so important to have as many riders as possible look after him, and if you have a chance of winning the race or getting the podium, that is huge. So I think it outweighs winning stages, but when it starts slipping away from them, the GC standings, then there's that bit of panic. And some of the teams are like that. We see Ineos Grenadiers, they had Pidcock in it yesterday, Astana, you know, they're sending men up the road of more recent days, I think, because they know now that you know, it's time to try and get some bit of glory out of the race and get men into the breakaway.
GC, as things stood at the start of today, 54 seconds the advantage that the Norwegian Odd Christian Eiking enjoys over the Frenchman Guillaume Martin. Rounding out the top 10, Felix Groschardt at 5:31. So Lopez is going to have to go a fair bit further up the road if he wants to infiltrate the top 10 at the end of today. And it looks like the chase is very much on. Yeah, back to the point before, Sean. I guess EF Education Nippo are a case in point, and that at the Tour de France they had Rigoberto around right up there on GC for what, 2.5 weeks I think it was, and when he finally lost his legs, lost his form and slipped down the order, it left them with very little time to get anything else out of the race. Conversely here, they lost their leader Hugh Carthy in the first week, and it's allowed them a lot of space to go up the road, and they've taken 2 stage wins partly because of that.
Yes, well, that is, you know, the advantage is if your GC man loses the position he liked to be in the earlier part of the race, or loses hope of getting any decent results in the overall standings, well, then you can, you know, change your tactic and put them into the breakaways and try and get stages. But when it happened very late on, well, then it's a real difficult one to rectify, because you haven't got the opportunity, you know, many days to get into the breakaway. And also when you make the breakaway, of course, you have to be able to win it in the end. So, you know, there's teams there that can get men in the breakaway, but they always find it difficult just to finish it off in the end. And some the other way around. Magnus Cort, you know, how good is he when he gets into a breakaway? You know, to win the stage, or, you know, to fight as he did in this race and get so close when the possibility 20k, 15k out was so slim that they said he had no chance of holding on here and getting so close to the line in the end. You know, those are the riders that they've got that talent to be able to do that. They're in the breakaway, and even when it's looking really difficult, can still finish it off.
Yeah, he's been on blinding form here at the Vuelta a España. Magnus Cort Nielsen, 2 stage wins, 1 from a big group, 1 from a breakaway. Could have been 3. Came oh so close, didn't he, on those very steep gradients on the stage that Primož Roglič ended up winning from Enric Mas. Only got caught within sight of the line and still lost almost a minute on Primož Roglič by the time that he crossed it. It's over 2 minutes to these guys now from the group that's behind them, 2 minutes and 8 seconds, and that group continues to look at each other on this road, and this really, you'd say, is where they could work well together to bring the gap down. We're going to have a word with our race leader now. Odd Christian Eiking spoke to us earlier on today. Let's hear what his thoughts were.
How many days have you been in the red jersey? Do you remember now?
I lost the count now, but I think around 5.
And how many more days do you want it?
Of course, if I can keep it today, it will be really nice. So, like I said before, I take it day by day, and after I could hold on to it yesterday, that was already a big victory for me and the team.
On paper, it was more GC day yesterday than it will be today, but can it be the opposite?
I think today is normally it suits me well, but we are approaching the 3rd week, and we're in the 3rd week, so you never know how the legs are.
Day by day, you never know how the legs are. A few cliches being thrown in there, but don't think it matters. Odd Christian Eiking will be thoroughly pleased with how his race has gone so far.
Yes, and the interesting one, Dan, is he doesn't know exactly how many days he's in red. He doesn't know what week he's in the race, and that is something we all know.
I don't think he cares.
Well, when you're a bike rider, and I've said it many times, you know, to my buddies out training, when you're in a 3-week tour, you just forget what day you have. And, you know, people say to you what day of the week is, and you just go stage by stage, and you look, you're in stage, 10 or 12, and you're looking ahead for the days to come up. So you just go day by day and what stage it is.
They often don't know where they are in the country either. We did a GCN video many years ago where on the start line we asked people if they knew where they were. I'd say at least 50%, possibly more like 75, had no clue what the town was that they're starting in, or indeed whereabouts in Italy it was, because that was at the Giro d'Italia. It's of no consequence to bike riders in many respects, because all they need to look at is the profile of the day, the wind direction, the type of terrain. road surface, etc, etc, and how they're going to get to the line either as quickly or as safely as possible. Where that line is doesn't make a lot of difference. Not everyone's like that. You do get riders who like their geography, like to know whereabouts they are in the world, but certainly for me, there's plenty of places I see on TV that I realise I've been here before, I just don't remember it. If you're watching on TV, we're going to have a short break, but we'll be back with you very shortly indeed. Does change the dynamic of a chase behind, Sean, doesn't it, having a rider that is reasonably close on GC in the breakaway up the road. 10 minutes is a lot to play with, but it means that they can't relax in the same way that they could do had a group with no one within half an hour had gone up.
Yes, well, I think it does have an effect, but the name of that rider, Lopez, Trek-Segafredo, they'll be not too concerned about that. I think it's what we've been through in this race, the weather conditions, the real warm temperatures, the way the race has been going for many days. There have been really very few days where it's one of these transition stages, and all of that I think the riders are thinking about. And when you think about this stage, 95.5 to go, they're just concerned about conserving as much energy as possible for later in the day. And I don't think it's the riders up there. Back in the main peloton of the favourites, of course, with the red jersey, they are more aware of that, and they have to keep maybe a more of a pace, not to allow this group to get away too far. So, yeah, it's just the race today has been so difficult, and I think a lot of the riders here, are feeling that effort in the earlier part of the day, and also thinking of what's to come.
How much will these two be feeling their effort later on today? That's the big question, because as things stand, 2.5 minutes, looking better and better for the duo up front. We haven't been used to seeing the early part of Vuelta stages though, unlike the Tour de France and the Giro d'Italia, where almost all of the stages are shown from start to finish. We only had a couple at this year's Vuelta a España, so it's easy to forget, having been live for this long with our coverage, that we're still only just over halfway through the stage, almost 100 kilometres still to go. It's a long way, anything can still happen. There's really no organisation at all in this group behind, despite them being on roads where it would be a great benefit to have a large group rolling through and off. I can't really see anyone in there that wouldn't have a reason to chase those two up front or to get themselves further away from the peloton behind, but maybe I've missed something. Certainly seen a couple of the riders from Team DSM active, the two bigger ones, Thymen Allensman and Martin Tusveld, both trying to get themselves away from the rest of that group. Wout Poels, as Sean just mentioned as well, got Michael Storer in there, so they've got 4, Sean, in the break. I mean, I know they've got their full complement of 8 riders still in this race, but given what we had as a start today, that's quite impressive.
It is, and we've seen that before. In the days, Romain Bardet was in the break, and he was, the one I think they were trying to ride for, and trying to just prepare the terrain for them, and then it started attack in the end. Some of the same as we have today. They were riding there, but nobody, giving it anything near full on, and just waiting, and then it was Storer who went in the move in the attack with Sivakov and a number of other riders, and he won the stage. So yeah, it's something the same situation here, and they will try and maybe do that, but I think now they'll have more confidence in the man Storer, because he can finish it off on this sort of terrain, and we know he's in also excellent shape. And this man here on our screen, Micah, he's a long way down the general classification, almost 30 minutes down. But we remember in the Tour of France, in the end, the way he was riding for his race leader, he was excellent in that final week. So he's still able to produce the results. Just in the earlier part of this race, maybe wasn't in the form he would like to be the first days.
And he's back now to doing what he does best, or what he has done over the last few years of his career, where he was more of a team leader. He's now here with UAE Team Emirates as a helper for Tadej Pogačar, we saw at the Tour de France just a couple of months ago. But he's found some legs, And they're making a great fist of it, those two out front. And there are quite a lot of King of the Mountains points up for grabs today. I think it was Mike himself who took the full 10 points on that opening first category KOM. We've got 5 at the top of the next one that they are about to start, the Puerto de Pedro Bernardo. After that, it's another first category climb, the Puerto de Mijares. So 10 points available at that one as well. And then the last climb, a third category, which comes a little way before the finish line. 3, 2 and 1 for the first 3 riders across the line. So if he manages to nab all of them, he'll have got himself 28 points today. So nowhere near Romain Bardet, but certainly in the game. A long way still to go until he manages to achieve that feat. And I'd imagine it's the stage win for those two, Sean, that they'd be most thinking about today.
Yes, I think definitely with the stage win they'll be trying to walk towards. But of course, when you pick up those points for later in the race in the mountain classification, then you're back in the fight again.
Yeah, you never know what can happen. Well, we've got a feast of racing for you on GCN and Eurosport today. Over on the other Eurosport channel and on our digital channels, you can find the Bretagne Classic one-day race up in Plouay in Brittany in France. 106 k's to go, as you can see in that race. Always a cracking one to watch. But if you are on our digital platforms, don't forget, if you want to stay with the Vuelta, you'll be able to watch that on demand at the end of the day today. But yeah, Nico Roach, who was with us for 3 days earlier on this week, he's competing there for Team DSM, so you can see how he gets on, and indeed a lot of the other favourites, because we spoke about Tadej Pogacar. He's competing for the first time since the Olympic Games at the Bretagne Classic, which you just saw on your screen. So it's there available live if you'd like it, or if you'd like to keep your eyes here on the Vuelta. As I said, it's available on demand afterwards. Not only that, Cymac Ladies Tour has also been on. That will be available on demand now, I believe. We've also got some mountain biking for you today. The Downhill Mountain Bike World Championships are taking place. Yesterday it was the cross country. Some historical performances in the elite men's and the elite women's there. I won't give away what happened and who won, just in case you haven't watched it yet. And beyond all of that, would you believe it, there's another race. The Deutschland Tour concludes today with the 4th and final stage. So a lot of cycling for you all to watch in this part of the year. And it continues. Benelux Tour starts tomorrow. Tour of Britain starts a week today. 2 week-long stage races, which I'm sure a lot of riders will be using as their final preparation for the World Championships. Certainly Wout van Aert amongst them, and Julian Alaphilippe in the Tour of Britain. And Remco Evenepoel will be back with a number on his back at the Benelux Tour on home roads. Back to this race though. Gap's come down a bit. 2 minutes and 3 seconds the gap between our leading pair out front here on your screen right now, and that large group of 20, which might have splintered. Certainly we saw DSM on the forefront of that group, trying to make sure the speed stayed high, and I'm pretty sure that on this next climb of the day it's not going to be a full group of 20. I'm starting to wonder, actually, yeah, they've taken it away now. It was ticking down so quickly, that gap on the top of my screen, that I was sure it was wrong. And I think they've realised it themselves as well. Here we are then. Brambilla on the front, and it's not 20 riders. And he doesn't have his teammate with him either. So we've got Brambilla, we've got Chris Hamilton, I think that is, Michael Storer of DSM, so 2 represented from that team in this group of 5 following our leading 2. We've also got a rider in there from the Israel Startup Nation. Yet to take a stage win so far in this race. They've got Guy Niv, the Israeli rider, 1 hour and 56 minutes down on GC, so no threat from that point of view. One further rider in that group who I didn't quite manage to identify before we switch back to our front of the race camera. So it's second climb of the day. 9 kilometres long is this one. Average grading only 4.2%. There are a couple of slightly steeper stretches, but it is reasonably steady on the way up. So it's not particularly hard. That's why it's second category, not first, despite the length of 9 kilometres. But important, Sean, that these riders keep pressing on behind, because they don't want that gap to get any bigger to the 2 out front.
No, even though the 2 out front are working real well together, they are pulling out the advantage, but they do not want them to get way out, and then it's going to be looking difficult to close them down. But it's still very much in the play for here for all the riders really. When you look back, 4 minutes that's not a huge amount. If there's something happened in the main peloton before the final climb of the day. And this race, we have seen it so many times where we've called, look, it's the breakaway, but then 10-15 kilometres further down the road, it starts to open pace in the peloton, and the advantage to that breakaway comes back very quickly. So with 91 plus kilometres to go here, you would expect it to see the winner come from the breakaway, but I'd prefer to wait for another maybe 20-30 kilometres into this stage before you can start calling it.
Yeah, it hangs in the balance, that's for sure. 4 minutes of a gap between the leading duo and the main peloton containing the red jersey of Odd Christian Eiking. That's not done just yet. We're a bit unsure as to how much we can expect in terms of the GC battle on today's stage. Although we've got a lot of climbing, 4 categorised climbs, we don't have those super steep gradients which we associate with stages of the Vuelta a España, and that sometimes can prevent riders from wanting to go on the attack. However, we saw that Lopez yesterday was very keen to try and go up the road, and he grabbed about 4 seconds on his main competitors. And we've got Carlos Verona in the break. I know I keep banging on about the fact that he's there, but the Spaniard from Team Movistar is there. And in my mind, I'm not sure if you'll agree with me, Sean, but they wouldn't be using his energy to try and go for a stage win. They've only got 4 riders to support Enric Mas and Miguel Angel Lopez. I can't imagine that they would use one of them to try and take stage glory. It feels to me like there's a plan of some sorts there.
Yes, well, you would expect that when you see Movistar putting men up the road on a stage like this one. Then you start thinking, are they going to try something in the final of the stage? And Lopez yesterday, it was a difficult climb for him because the gradient wasn't great. There was a headwind as well, but he did try, and that tells he has to be feeling real good, because otherwise, if you're not on your best, well, then you say, okay, this is not the terrain that suits me, there's a headwind there. There's plenty of excuses not to attack, and if the director sportive is pushing you a bit, you can use those when you finish the stage. But he did go off around 3 kilometres, I think, 2.5 from the finish, and only had a handful of seconds at the line, because we did see Jumbo-Visma, they had riders there to secure a very strong pace and keep him without pulling out a big advantage. But when he does that, it's an interesting one, and I think today they will try something again on the in the final run, wherever that will be. Will it be on the mountain, the last 4th category one? Will it be the 3rd category before we just go down to the finish? It's difficult to know, but I think we should see some sort of action.
It's got to be the 1st category one, surely. We're going to get more fireworks before we even know it. I guess the problem that they face at Movistar, though, is with 2 riders having gone home already, in order to try and set a ferocious pace, they don't have many riders left to do it. And I'm not sure whether Emmanuel Eviti will manage to get himself over these climbs to help with that pace setting. Jose Joaquin Rodriguez, or JJ Rojas, JJ Rojas and Nelson Oliveira, the other 2 riders that should still be around Enric Mas and Miguel Angel Lopez. Well, this trio are doing a decent job. You can see we've got Michael Storer and Chris Hamilton there for Team DSM, and the gap's closed. Had gone out to 2.5 minutes at one point between these 2 out front and that breakaway that's in between them and the main bunch behind. Now down to 1 minute and 40 seconds, so they've taken, well, not far off, a minute back on these 2. And although they're very, very good quality riders, both of them have taken multiple Grand Tour stages, both of them have been either high up on GC on the Grand Tour or have won the Grand Tour before. Fabio Aru, a former winner of this very race. But they will start to pay for the effort of just having one person to share the workload with. Been a long day. I guess the other point, though, Sean, is that neither of those 2 were active on the flatter part. We saw a lot of activity from riders looking to try and get away. Rafa Majka and Fabio Aru, we didn't see too much of them until things started to get a bit tastier in terms of gradients, and I think I think you pointed this out earlier actually, those that were very active in those first 60-70 kilometres, they'll pay for that when we get to the climbs.
Yes, and there's some riders that can ride the first 45, maybe close to 50 kilometres, where it was very flat, and the rate that we're going at, that has to be the big strong riders, the powerful ones, the rollers, and they're going to give it their all, and they say then, well, if I get into the breakaway, the job well done. If I don't make the breakaway, my job is over, and that is pretty much the case for a lot of riders. And the ones we have out here now in this front end of the race, they're ones which was, sit, wait in the peloton just for the wheels. And when you're riding, I think at one point we were averaging close to 52 kilometers per hour on the area apart. And that is really energy sapping when you're trying to filter into the breakaway. You're in a group out front and you're riding through trying to form a breakaway and a gap back to the peloton. But if you're sitting the wheels, the amount of energy you can save there is enormous. So it's not surprising that we're seeing those guys who would have been doing that just wait, and if the brake is not gone, well, then we have to spring into action for the team. And you see the likes of Geoffrey Bouchard here. He's a real climber, and the two DSM men as well. They're also for this sort of terrain. Bambria, another one who can do it on the flat, but also an excellent one over this mountainous terrain, which we have to get through, and we've been through now.
He's had a bit of a resurgence this year, as Gianluca Brambilla, the Italian on the back here for Trek Segafredo. A bit like Romain Bardet yesterday, who'd had a long drought when it came to any win, let alone one in the World Tour. Brambilla at the start of this year had gone at least a couple of years, I think it was about 2.5, and then he managed to take a stage win and the GC, a French stage race earlier on this year. The name is, I think, Tour des Alpes Maritimes Divine, I think was the stage race that he won. Disappointing Mike Woods of Israel Startup Nation in the process. 89 k's to go. If you're watching on TV, we're about to have a short break, but we'll be back very shortly. Four riders surround Odd Christian Eike, Norwegian who's led this race for longer than he can remember at this point. Brilliant race it's been for that squad. Brilliant season, I have to say. Louis Meintjes is the man on his wheel, the South African who's also up there on the general classification inside the top 15 as things stand right now. So 3 riders to do the work, and as Sean pointed out, they've got Petilli also up the road. So another person to share the workload if or when he gets caught later on in this stage. Gap to the front too, though, is coming down very quickly. We saw that Chris Hamilton of Team DSM was struggling slightly with the pace. Not surprising though, you'd imagine that his job was just to get Michael Storer much closer to the front of the race, and he's achieved that. So Storer making his way across with a couple of other riders. No word from what I can see on what the gap is to the rest of that 20-man group that's now scattered over the road on this stage. We're halfway up this climb, or at least the front 2 riders are. 9 k's long, 4.7 k's until we'll get to the top of it. Another quick descent down will come immediately after that. I'd be interested to know where some of the sprinters are in this race, because there's been no let-up. Looks a bit steadier here now, but that pace is still reasonably high. And here comes Wout Poels. Bahrain Victorious were desperate to get a man into the breakaway today. Ended up being the Dutchman. And he did it the hard way. I think he was one of the last men to get across to that 20-man group. And he's now up here with Storer, Geoffrey Bouchard and Gianluca Brambilla. Bouchard, the Frenchman, you might remember from the Giro d'Italia. I think he took the KOM jersey at the end of that race. Always on the attack. Came close to a stage win, didn't he? I think it was him and Koen Bouwman that were up the road on a stage. The first stage that we had finished on a little bit of gravel before Egan Bernal came forward like a rocket, disappointed him in the process. A quick word about Egan Bernal, Sean. I might leave it until after the break on terrestrial TV is finished, so I can get your thoughts then. Yeah, we saw Egan Bernal saying that he was on much better form yesterday, felt much more himself, and that bodes particularly well for him. I didn't see that coming, I've got to say. I thought that he was going to remain at the level that we've seen him so far at the Vuelta, but he's feeling better. That's very good for the race and very good for us watching on. Well, Chris Hamilton might have been dropped, but Michael Storer's got more company from a teammate. Hyman Allensman, very, very talented youngster. Saw quite a lot of him at last year's Vuelta as a first-year pro, 21 years of age, and he hasn't even stopped to catch his breath. Straight to the front of this group. He's got a job to do, and that is to get Michael Storer up towards Fabio Aru and Rafael Majka, who lead this race. Welcome back. Had a slight change behind our front two riders. Gap now coming down towards the 1 minute mark, and Michael Storer has got himself some company in the form of Tijmen Arendsman, the young 21-year-old Dutchman, who's gone immediately on the front to try and close this gap down even further. It looks like Aru might just be starting to struggle with the pace being set here by Rafael Majka. First signs of him rocking over his bike, and I think we'd all dearly love to see Fabio Aru take a stage in this, his last race as a pro rider, but with the body language now, Sean, it doesn't look like he's got the same form as Majka.
No, he looks to be starting to run out of power here, and not surprising. Out here in front, just with two after the start we had this morning to the stage. Unless you're in excellent shape, well, then you're going to start paying as the day go on. And Aru, he has been sick as well, and you recover from the sickness, you feel okay. Maybe for 100 kilometres, 120 kilometres, then suddenly, the legs start to get weak and the power just leaves you, and then you know that you're not back to where you would like to be. And also, Aru, he hasn't been riding that well. He hasn't been, showing that shape of recent either, where he is, back to his best. But again, he's a rider that, you know how to read the race, as we said, Dan. You just wait in the peloton, and then when you get to the terrain where you can really excel, then you can move into the breakaway. But to be able to go all the way in this one, it was a difficult one. And Majka is, he is riding well, and we did see, as I mentioned, in the Tour of France, he had an excellent final week in the mountains, looking after the yellow jersey. But he's out here for a long time as well, and I think there's a lot more fresher guys coming out of the breakaways. You can see he's changing all the time in the breakaway, and DSM, the numbers we talked about, we see Chris Hamilton there up there, and he disappeared very quickly, and then we had the other man coming across there, Arendsman, which is a change of domestique out front, and when you have numbers like that, well, then it's a great situation to be in. But we can see all coming back together once again. Yeah,
groups swelling again, and DSM left with 3 riders here. Michael Storer hasn't had to do too much work himself on the front, but Verona's back in here, so is Steven Kruijswijk. Wout Poel's there as well. Now we've got the rider from Lotto Soudal, Stef Kras, is also in this group. If you had to guess, Sean, how long would you say it's been since Rafael Majka took a pro victory? You're not guessing, you're looking it up. If you didn't just look that up, Sean.
No, I didn't not look it up. I just need time to, a little time to think about it. 4 years.
I'm not sure if I believe you. Well, it will be 4 years in a couple of days' time. 2nd of September 2017 was Rafael Majka's last professional victory, and that came at this race, the Vuelta a España, stage 14.
Voila.
I think Sean's very pleased with himself, whether he looked it up or not. Well, the gap's going back up again. Majka is on good form today. 1 minute and 26 seconds back to the group that we've just seen on our screens. For those of you that were on a commercial break, I just started to talk a little bit about Egan Bernal. And yesterday he was right up there on the finish line with Primož Roglic, who put in a big acceleration to bring Miguel Angel Lopez back as best as possible before the finish line. And in his post-race interviews, the Colombian talked about how he felt better than he has at any point in the race so far. That bodes very well, doesn't it, Sean? Because we haven't seen the best of Egan Bernal. He's not looked like the rider that we saw win the Giro d'Italia back in May. Did you expect to see him come back, or do you expect to see much from him today and for the rest of this Vuelta?
Well, I could expect a lot from him for the rest of this Vuelta, and the final week, he could really come good. And the talk yesterday after the stage that he felt better and was feeling, I suppose, comfortable is the word. And the way he was riding in the end, when the race did kick off a bit, when they were chasing Miguel Angel Lopez there, Jumbo Visma, and then Primož Roglic, you know, kicked off in the end, and he was one of the ones who matched him. So it's a good pointer for the rest of this race, and possibly for today as well in the final. And you know, we talk about the GC standings. He's 2 3/4 minutes, I think, roughly down on Primož Roglic. So it's not impossible to make that up if he can really come into his good shape into the final week of this one. And you know, next week there's some, you know, very big days. Wednesday, Thursday, real big mountains, and very, very steep ones as well, and long. And that's where Bernal is, you know, really strong. In the steep stuff, he can do a lot of damage.
Well, it could be very interesting if Bernal's on top form. Meanwhile, Arensman, we've been talking about him.
One more stage victory yesterday with Romain Bardet. You guys look unstoppable.
Yeah, this is already 3 stage victories in 14 days, and today is not a good opportunity, so today we try to go for it again.
You are kind of lucky that you are not riding for GC. Yesterday when the break was gone, riders like you or Michael Storer, who can also win today again, what did you do? Did you race economy?
Yeah, well, yesterday the plan was to go with Romain, and well, he was in the break, so we could try to take it easy, save some energy. So that's exactly what we did, so we can try and hunt for another stage victory today.
Is it even more suitable for a breakaway today?
Yeah, we think so. I think there's an opportunity to go for the break. It depends, of course, what the GC teams are doing, but we are going to try and get a 4th stage victory.
Judging by the angle of that camera, he's a very big man, Thymen Arensman. Just looked him up, in fact, 1m90. So well over 6 foot. But a great climber. He's right up there on the stage today in the thick of the action. And he's a man that finished 2nd on GC at the Tour de l'Avenir a few years back. Winner that year? Tadej Pogačar. It's 2018. 3rd place, Dino Mader. 4th place, Alexander Vlasov. And you start to realise why Thymen Arensman has been bigged up so much for his professional career. Still just 21 years of age, still plenty of time for him to come good and take some big stage victories. He already came good actually at the Tour of Romandy this year, 11th place on the general classification. But he's a big man for a climber, Sean.
Yes, he is, and some guys, the big guys, they can climb, real well. Lots of power, just sit there in the saddle, and
like Bradley Wiggins.
Yes, Bradley Wiggins, Miguel Indurain. You can go through the names, and it's amazing the way those guys can get up the climbs. But now, Dan, they're all about the weight, and they just get down to the minimum. And even though the big guys, they're very tall, but still they're at the minimum amount of carrying weight, and it's amazing the way they can get up the climbs. And yeah, depending on what sort of climb it is as well, if it's a climb where the grade is not huge, then they can sit there, just power away, and it's impressive the way they can get over these major ones.
We'll get back to that subject shortly, but we'll just call Rafał Majka over the 2nd categorised climb of today's stage. So he picks up more points. He picked up the maximum 10 on the first one, so he's starting to rack a few up in the King of the Mountains competition here at La Vuelta. Of course, it's a competition that he's gone for in the past quite successfully, got to say, in the Grand Tours. But we think that today it's the stage win that he's thinking about most in his head. And just to remind you, it would be 4 years since he last took a stage victory. It is 4 years since he last took a stage victory at any race in the Pro Peloton. Fabio Aru, well, I think he was going to be waiting for the group behind now. I wouldn't say he's blown, but he certainly started to feel his legs feel the pinch when Rafał Majka continued at his pace up that previous climb. Gap must be over 30 seconds, I think, now between those two riders, but it's once again gone up to the group behind. Had come down to a minute, Sean. I don't know how it's gone up so quickly again. Presumably they're all looking at each other.
Yes, well, we did see when we had that group of Storer, Jeff Bouchard, Pouls, they made the effort to get out of that very big group, which is back together again. So the advantage out to Micah, and at that point Aru came down, but now it's growing out again. You can see the way it's getting bigger all the time, so more riders coming back into the chase group behind our 2 leaders out front here. And yeah, it's still going on where they don't seem to be over anxious to ride together. It looks like Branby is the one who is just setting a nice pace on the front, but you can see here a lot of riders just waiting as the kilometres go by.
Yeah, it's a big group again now, isn't it? Pitilli back in for Intermarché, Wanty Gobert, Mikel Nieve there as well. It'd be good to see him get some success late on in his career, particularly after the crash that he endured along with Romain Bardet in the early part of this year's Vuelta. Always remarkable to see those riders get up from such things and continue on to the rest of the to the finish line, let alone for the rest of a Grand Tour. But that's exactly what he's doing. I don't know how many Grand Tours he's done in his career, Mikel Nieve, but it must be getting up towards the mid-20s, I'd have thought. I'll take a look in a few moments' time. There's Michael Storer on the front. The Australian has already taken 2 stage wins at this race. Off to pastures new next year, of course, with Groupama FDJ.
And we've just seen
Just
seen the Narvaez abandoned Ineos Grenadiers, another rider.
Oh wow!
Losing in the matter of 24-48 hours. So they're 2 men down now. And we did see Kenny Ellison as well. He was came up as abandoned, but he's not. He's actually at the rear end of the peloton there. I've seen him on an occasion when we're back with the main group.
Well, that's good news. Kenny Ellison is still in the race. And very much in the race, Rafael Micah. He can't really do anything now, Sean, except fully commit, can he? He's set his stall out. He's gone away with what was initially a 3-man move, down to 2, now just down to 1. He's put so much energy into it, there's no point in waiting for a big group to try and save any.
No, well, if you wait for the big group, then it gets complicated again, because we have seen the way it has been, and it's just very tactic and watching each other. Marking each other out, nobody wanting to ride with the advantage Mike have got out in front. Just keep on going here, and he'll be hoping that he'll be able to keep going at this rate for the rest of the stage and get on to the final climb, which is a relatively short one before we have that little run down to the finish. If he gets to there with that 2 or 3 minute advantage, well then he should be able to go all the way. But the next climb will be the big one for him. Will there be action before we get to that, as now we're on this descent? If they really start to race in the earlier part of that, well, it's a long one. I think it's 15 is it 15 kilometres or 20 kilometres actually. He will have to have all his power to keep on going at this rate, but he's a rider that he's done it before. And the pointer is that I always look to the Tour of France. He was riding really strong in the final week, and I think he's coming back into that sort of shape now in this Vuelta.
Yeah, it's a long climb they've got coming up. We might say that the gradients aren't too severe, but any climb that goes on for 20 kilometres is not to be sniffed at. And they're not too far away from the foot of it now, in terms of time at least, because most of what they're about to deal with is descent. They have got a short valley road once they get to the foot of the descent before they do start climbing. The precise point is with 59 kilometres to go. So for Rafa Micah, 20 Ks and probably a little under 20 minutes, given its descent most of the way down, before he gets to that one. Get a sense of the frustration that the riders often go through when they're waiting for bottles at the back of the peloton. Can be a long time on a climb like this on fairly narrow roads before your team car is able to get up to you to service you, because you don't want to drop all the way back to wherever it is. Of course, if you're leading the race like Odd Christian Eichen, you've got car number 1. That's how they base the caravan of cars behind the main peloton. It's based on your best placed rider on GC. So car number 1 will be Intermarché, car number 2 with Guillaume Martin will be Team Cofidis, car number 3 will be Team Jumbo-Visma with Primož Roglic in 3rd place on GC. So for H2R, whose best placed rider is Geoffrey Bouchard, 21st, they could be quite a long way back. They sense the frustration of that rider trying to get some sustenance. If you've been away, you rejoin us with a gap of 2 minutes and 23 seconds from our lone leader, Rafał Majka, to a group that's once again swelled to a sizable margin. Meanwhile, the main peloton are going over the second categorised climb of the day. Now we've got confirmation of the points that were taken by the riders up front. Majka with 5, Aru with 3, and Michael Storer with 1. And this is how things look. Storer in third place in that competition on 22. Caruso is on second in 31. And it's Romain Bardet with a reasonably clear margin over everybody else after what he achieved yesterday. Not only did he get the stage win, he picked up a raft full of points and is now on 50. And he'll be happy that Caruso didn't manage to go up the road today, because he certainly tried, the Italian. And Intermarché has certainly tried on the descent, Sean.
Yes, well, they're doing an excellent job here in controlling, and you know, we often talk about a team when they surprisingly get a race leader's jersey. You ask yourself, you know, how are they going to control it, because they do not have the riders of that calibre, and suddenly, you know, they get into the race, and the way the riders, you know, just rise to the occasion when they get the race leadership, it's amazing. And that's what Intermarché are doing here, because they are riding out of their skin, a lot of the riders. And in the meantime, the team of Primož Roglič is getting an easy ride. The pressure is off. The last number of days, you know, they have spared so much of their men within the Jumbo team. This is a real good one for Primož Roglič, but Intermarché, you know, chapeau, you have to hand it to them the way they're controlling. And you know, now it's going to be a case, will he be good enough to hold on to the race leadership? The red jersey, Christian Odd Eiking, you know, today is going to be a test for him, and if there's a battle on that final mountain, you know, then he's going to be tested big time. But if there's again a little bit of a rival like we see yesterday, who knows, he could continue on. And yeah, when we ask him the question after the rest day, how many days in red jersey leadership, he just will have no chance of knowing.
Yeah, he didn't seem to know when we asked him and quizzed him earlier, did he? Yeah, we should do them the honour of naming that team, because they have done such a sterling job of defending that lead on this occasion. They were unlucky, of course, in that first week. Crash for Ryan Tarame. They did their best to try and get him back on terms, but on a sprinter's day, that was always going to be very difficult. So he lost the jersey after just one day. Louis Mainkeys, we mentioned, he's 14th on GC at just over 7 minutes. But Jan Hertz, great climber. Wesley Crader, the Dutchman, more of a sprinter. He's been doing his best as well. Riccardo Minali, Simone Petilli, who's up the road in that break. Kevin van Melsen of Belgium, the 34-year-old, and Ryan Tarame, who we've just mentioned. He's the man sat just in front of the leader of this race, Odd Christian Eiking. Michael Matthews at the back. Haven't seen too much of him today. Didn't seem to be trying to get into the breakaway from what I could see. He'll certainly be trying to get into one before the end of this race. However, when you start to look at the stages that remain, I think there's one that he'll definitely be picking out. Stage 19 to me looks like one that Matthews has his name written all over. A few categorised climbs at the start, lumpy towards the finish. Could potentially win from a small group. Well, the gaps are going up between every group, Sean. 2 minutes and 37 back to the group of Storer, as I will call it. 6 minutes and 15 back to this group. So they don't have much to worry about, because have you seen Juan Pedro Lopez in that group between?
No, I haven't been looking out for him, but he has to be there, because you know, that sort of rider, he should not be in difficulty. And the position he's in the GC, like if you had 10 minutes in the overall standing at the moment, that tells that, you know, this sort of terrain up to now, it shouldn't bother him. He's probably hiding very well. And you know, as we talked about Brambilla, when he tried to look like he was going to go in the attack, and he seemed to, you know, surprise Brambilla, because he was riding on the front and immediately went on the radio and he knocked off his effort. So I think he's told just hide as much as possible and wait for the final of this one, and leave Brambilla do his job here, continuing on to set a strong pace on the front of the big group of riders. .73 k's to go.
means they've got just over 120 kilometres in their legs so far today. If you've not long joined us, I can tell you we had an incredibly fast start to the stage. 51.5 kilometres covered in the first hour of racing. It was full chat. 25 riders heading up the road. A panic in the main peloton behind, because within that 25-man group was Sepp Kuss of Team Jumbo-Visma. So Movistar having to chase with the few riders they've got left in this Vuelta a España. They were thankful that Caja Rural also missed that break. They helped Movistar to chase it back down, and it carried on from there. And it's only really just got to the point where it started to settle down somewhat. But we are expecting something to happen in the closing part of these stages. I know there are people out there who are not expecting too much in terms of the GC battle today, courtesy of the fact that the climbs that we've still got to contend with aren't particularly steep. But surely we've got to see something. I'm going to remain hopeful. Also, if you missed it, Sean pointing out earlier that Jonathan Narvaez... Sorry, just got slightly distracted by the noise I heard then. Narvaez out of the race for Ineos Grenadiers, so with Carapaz as well, they are down to just 6 riders in the race. Egan Bernal, Adam Yates, both up there on GC, surrounded by Pidcock, Puccio, Sivakov and Dylan van Baal, who seems to have recovered okay from his crash. We're about to have the predictor. What was your pick for today, Sean?
I didn't actually pick because I wasn't on the predictor, so I was just looking at it, and yeah, it was a day I was maybe saying Caruso might try, but yeah, it was always going to be difficult for him to make the break. And we did see at the earlier part he was in that big move, but of course Bardet was always marking him. But I still thought, you know, that they might both be in the breakaway and he might get a second stage victory.
We shall wait and see. Seems unlikely at this point, doesn't it?
Well, no, it's not. It's not going to happen now. But you know, I'm up front with it. I'm not changing. I picked my.
Well, I'll allow you to change it, Sean. Whilst we're going through everybody else's predictions, have another think. With the current situation, who do you think's going to win? Well, it was a good day for the Frenchman Romain Bardet, and also a good day for the Frenchman Jackie Durand yesterday, the only person to correctly predict the stage winner. On to today then, we'll start with David Moncoutier.
Pour aujourd'hui, longue étape de près de 200
km. For today,
kilomètres.
It's a long stage of 200 kilometres, really nice climbing stage.
Je pense que ça va être encore une victoire de la DSM.
I think it will be another victory for Team DSM.
Jackie a eu bon, ami Romain Bardet.
Jackie was right with Romain Bardet yesterday, so I am going to go for Michael Storer today. I reckon it's going to be another day for the breakaway at La Vuelta, and as such I am going for Amaury van Zevenont. It's about time De Koning Quickstep got a win. It's been a couple of days. They've only had 3 in the race so far, but he's been looking pretty good, and he is a fighter. Even if he gets dropped on one of the last climbs, I think he'll come back and win. I'd like to point out that's not live. Moncoutier's prediction looking far better than mine. Let's hear from Hannah.
My prediction for stage 15 is Primoz Roglic. I think he's going to take today's stage into El Barraco, a stage with just less than 4,000 metres of elevation and just under 200 kilometres. 4 classified climbs along the way. He's going to be the one to take the victory today.
Yep, also looking like a better potential prediction than mine. Let's hear from Karsten.
Deze etappe gaat gewonnen worden door Andreas
This stage is going to be won by Andreas Kron.
En Kron heeft gewoon een beetje
it's a
mazzel
difficult
nodig om in de goede
stage, and
ontsnapping te
Kron
zitten.
just
En
needs a
als
little
hij
bit of
meedoet,
luck to get into the
dan kan hij
right
winnen.
breakaway.
Het is een niet
The finish
al te
is not
lastige aankomst,
that
dus het is echt
difficult,
wel goed om
so
een beetje
I
een
think
sprint in
that
de
the
benen te
winner
hebben en dat
will
weten
need to
dat hij
sprint
dat
for the
heeft.
stage, and we know that
Vandaag
Kron
gaat het
is
gebeuren.
pretty good at the
Eindelijk
sprint.
Andreas Kron
So this stage is going to be finally won by Andreas Kron. Yeah, we do all those predictions either the night before or the morning of the stage. So if you're wondering why Karsten Kroon's gone for somebody that's not in the break, Kroon going for Kron, and I've gone for someone that's also not managed to make the breakaway in Amaury and Zevenont, it's because we try and do it before the stage starts. Have you had time to think, Sean?
Yes, I have, and I'm going for Wout Poels.
Second stage victory potentially for Bahrain Victorious. Yeah, he has looked good today. He's had to, as I said earlier, do it the hard way. He was one of the last men to get into the counter move behind Maika Fabio Aru and Van Gils, as it was to begin with when they went away. And he also found himself on the wrong side of a split just a few moments ago, but he's back up there in this group now.
And as you said, Dan, the prediction is done the night before, or the morning of the race before the start. And your pick, Van Zevenant, he was impressive in the earlier part, as Carsten Krohn was also very active in that big breakaway, and then got out of that again and was out in front, put in a big effort. But then, as we talked about earlier, an hour ago, anybody that put in the big effort in the earlier part to get into the breakaway, I think they all paid the price then later as we got into the more mountainous climbs, the counting categorised climbs in the stage.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Sean. It was looking far better for Carsten and I earlier on in the stage when we first ran that predictor in. For those of you that are watching on our digital coverage, because we've had this stage live from kilometre zero. Well, before it actually, we had the start line, waved the riders off, had the neutralised zone, and then waved them off officially for what was a frantic start to the race. So if you're watching on terrestrial TV, don't forget you can subscribe to either the Eurosport player or the GCN app, and you will be able to get more coverage, because not only do we sometimes start earlier courtesy of other live sports on our linear TV channels, but also there's no ad breaks, so get yourself involved. Well, they've been going for it down the descent, Antomarchi Wanty-Gobert, slightly faster than I would normally expect a team that's defending a race lead to do so, but because of that they've actually reduced the gap somewhat to our leader on the road. Rafael Mike is 6 minutes and 14 seconds ahead of the main peloton, or what's left of it. 2.5 minutes now in front of the group behind him. And he'll be pleased with that, Sean, because we saw it come down to just over a minute. I'm sure at that point he was expecting to get caught fairly shortly afterwards.
Yes, it looked like it was going to come down, and I was expecting a smaller group to get out of the big chasing group we have behind our leader on the road. But it's happened a number of times, but they're not able to just get that gap and with 3 or 4 riders and then start working together and eat into the advantage of Rafa Moika, who is leading the stage at the moment. So it looks that he's really putting in a strong performance, and 64.8 kilometres. This stage, it went so rapid in the fast when we had the flat section. They were racing so fast, but now the kilometres are going by, so slow. For Mike, it must be a real difficult one to keep going out there, and will he be able to, keep going at the rate he's been going out for many kilometres? That is a big ask, but he's a rider that he's proved in the past he can do it, and he's in a real good position for the moment to hold it all the way, but it will depend on the breakaway. If they can get organised a bit and start chasing, well then they should be able to eat into his advantage.
Well, I know we've become used over the last year or two to long solo escapades, and ones that are successful, courtesy of the likes of Remco Evenepoel, who's been up to it very recently as well, Mathieu van der Poel, etc, etc. But if Micah did manage to pull this off, it really would be quite something. I think he went with almost 90 kilometres to go. I say he went, that was the point at which Fabio Aru was no longer able to keep up with him. But it would certainly be a long time on your own to be able to win a stage of a Grand Tour. I'm trying to think of the last person who would have done longer than 90 kilometres on their own and won a Grand Tour stage. I'm sure somebody will help me out. If you know, write in. You can find me at Daniel Lloyd 1 on Twitter, so DanielLLoyd1, or you can let Sean know at Sean Kelly CC.
It's very simple.
SEAN. Yeah, just need to know the spelling of Sean, but I'm sure given your name is so well known, Sean, nobody will have a problem with that.
No, I mean, sorry Dan, I mean the breakaway, sole breakaway.
Oh, you already know?
Yes.
Go on then.
Chris Froome.
Ah yes, how could I forget that? That was over 90 k's, was it?
Yes, just under the 90 k's. I think it was 80, in the 85, 86.
Yeah. Feels like a long time ago, doesn't it? It's only 3.5 years.
Yes, it does. And when you're on those races and you try and think back about stages and long breakaways, things that happened during the those 3-week tours or for the one-day races. It sounds or it feels a long time ago, but when you actually look at the years, some of them are a long ways, and other ones are not so long, surprisingly.
Oh, it's all splitting up again in this group of just under 20 riders that are 2.5 minutes down on Rafał Majka. Guy Niv, I think it is actually at the back of the Israel Startup Nation. He's caught out because he's just gone back to the team car for a bottle. But up front we have riders attacking. There's a few in the distance actually, so this started a little while ago. I'm actually surprised now I've seen that, to see Niv going back for bottles at this point in the race. Try and see who that is in just a few moments. Wout Poels, Sean's pick, has been caught out by the looks of things. Let's head up the road and see exactly who we've got in between. We can already see the effect it's had, because it was down to 1 minute and 50 seconds on that graphic. And we've got a few riders: Steven Kruijswijk, Carlos Verona, looks like Alansman again, and Jeffrey Bouchard. So it's all splitting up on this flat road before we start climbing again. Well, for our TV viewers, we've got a bit of an update for you on the standings within the breakaway behind Rafał Majka. 4 riders have prized themselves away: Steven Kruijswijk, Carlos Verona. Man on the front here, I think, is Alansman. Yep, it is. And Jeffrey Bouchard, the Frenchman from AG2R, is also in this group. And it's a reasonable distance back to some dribs and drabs further down. Wout Poels, a part of a 2-man group that's about 10 or 15 seconds off this one. And the rest of them further behind that. And they kind of need to do this, Sean, because we've been seeing over the course of this stage that they just haven't worked well together as a big group. But when you narrow it down to 4 or 5 riders, when everyone's committed, then you can start to make a difference.
Yes, and I think they realise that you have to start shaking it up here out of this big chasing group away, because they were not organised at all. And in the meantime, our leader here is just pulling out the time, 6 minutes and 6 seconds at the moment. You have to start trying to form a smaller group and get working together, and that's what we have out in the front of the race now. And but is it going to be enough for the leaders chasing here, that 4 group of we can see Kruijswijk, Alansman and Jeffrey Bouchard, Verona. They have to keep on pushing real strong, because Wout Poels is not too far off, and if it kicks up a bit, that's where those riders will come across, and then it gets unorganised again, and it gets messy, and you're back into the same situation. So they have to get organised and keep on pushing. As we can see, Aru is just about to be pulled back by this chasing 4.
Yeah, Fabio Aru, who had been at the head of this race with Rafał Majka. He's been in no man's land between Majka and the group behind him, but he's just about to be caught by Steven Kruijswijk, who's on a bit of a mission today. Saw Sepp Kuss on the attack early on in the stage. Steven Kruijswijk, no real threat on GC to Odd Christian Eiking and the others in the top 10, because he started the day for Team Jumbo-Visma a fair way down. 16 minutes and 24 seconds in 17th place, but being given the freedom by the looks of things to try and go for a stage win today. Not Carlton Kirby's pick though. I understand that Carlton's back in the box after his lunch.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, Gorka Izagirre is my selection for today, and the way he has been riding on, particularly on the descents, got a bit of a kick on him at the end as well. I was a bit fearful about the climbs, but he seems to be sailing over them rather nicely. He doesn't really get over the peaks as good as Jon these days, but he's a real skirmisher, and I think he stands a great chance. He's got to chase back in, of course, and
got to love a good skirmisher.
Yeah. Oh, well, sorry, I was just about to say, here he is. Here's Movistar chasing on at the moment for Carlos Verona, who's up the road. Yeah, I love a good skirmisher. You're absolutely right. Oh. Well, I've had a lovely lunch, I must say. All too short. The descent has eaten into my my downtime, but glad to be back. It's been a day that's it's had its ebbs and flows, hasn't it? We've kind of we have these hiatus, and then all of a sudden you just know it's going to kick off again. Here's your youth classification with Egan Bernal as top dog at the moment. Minute 43 clear of Vlasov. Marder is at 2 minutes and 26. It looks like that competition all wrapped up, but Dan, he doesn't want this. He wants a red jersey.
He does, yeah. Not much to be gained in terms of Egan Bernal's worth or Palmares by winning the white jersey at La Vuelta a España. He's a winner of 2 Grand Tours, the other two, Tour de France and the Vuelta a España. He'd love to win it here, wouldn't he? And although he hasn't looked like he's been capable of doing that so far, I think yesterday bodes quite well for him. He's hoping for more of the same today in the rest of this race. This is getting very selective, Sean, and at long last, really. How many different kinds of grades have we offered up today? It's a griddling process, but graded grains make for a finer break. I'm asking myself whether Mike is going to make it or not. I know you've been doing precisely the same. We've got Egan Bernal coming up for you in just a moment to talk about the day as we ponder him. Well, yesterday seemed like a good day for GC, and today it doesn't. But could it be the total opposite? Well, today two things can happen, he says. All the GC contenders can be present at the finish, and everyone can be careful, or the race could just blow up. The climb is not too hard. It's a long first category test, so if someone has the legs, they could blow the race apart.
Así que yo creo que el que tenga piernas podría hacer explotar la carrera hoy, la verdad.
Or without Carapaz, you could have less opportunities to blow it up, and of course now Narvaez has gone as well. Carapaz, such a great ride. And he's not been at his best shape, but it's very helpful to have him. But we have a great team. Pavel Sivakov, who's going very well. Dylan Van Baal, it's in good shape. We have the right team to do something, and it depends on how the legs are, how Adam Yates is as well, and of course how I'm doing. So we'll just have to wait and see. Well, I think, Dan, that was a very much it depends kind of interview, wasn't it? How's the day going to go? Well, it depends. And what your team going to do? Likewise. Unfortunately, his team has diminished today, and that does not help. It doesn't, no. Like Movistar, Ineos Grenadiers are now down to just 6 riders, and also like Movistar, they're still trying to protect 2 of them, so it puts a lot of pressure on the other 4 that are still remaining within the race. Movistar, though, were doing a great job today getting Carlos Verona up into this front group. Ineos Grenadiers, they'll still have pretty much everybody around Adam Yates and Egan Bernal. I'm not sure how Tom Pidcock will be feeling after his escapades in the breakaway yesterday, where he finished in 4th place on the stage, but yeah, it's not going to make things any easier for them, let's put it that way. I must admit, I was quite pleased to see what I thought was Kenny Elissonde bridging over, but it's not. It's JP Lopez who was part of this group. No disappointment there, because Juan Pedro can do extremely well. Kruiswijk as well, doing a fantastic job. Another marker that they've sent up the road, Sean. And despite the fact that much of the work today is being done on behalf of Jumbo-Visma, really, by Intermarché Wanty, which they must be very grateful for, because they've done a good job of it. Jumbo-Visma doing a super job of making sure that they've always got a watchman within the break.
Yes, well, it's certainly a change of tactic from Jumbo-Visma compared to last year's Tour of France and the Vuelta last year. They just seem to be riding on the front and controlling. Now they're sending men into breakaways, and we've seen already this morning where Seb Kuss is in the GC in a real good place, and they put him into that move and did not have to do anything, got a free ride in that first 50 kilometres of hectic racing, and then Kruiswijk out here in front. So the team of Intermarché Wanty cannot ask Primož Roglič to put some of his men on the front, because he's going to say, well, we have a man in front and maybe he can take the stage victory. So yeah, it's a good situation to be in, and it's definitely a different tactic from what we see last season.
Certainly is. Fabio, it was lovely to see him making us talk about him today, and we were kind of used to that over the years. But unfortunately for him, he is dropped out of the back of this group. And likewise, my pick, Gorka Izagirre, also looks like he's struggling just a little bit. In fact, possibly struggling quite a lot, to be honest. As we look at how this has also detonated. Arensman starting to struggle, just rolling a little bit. Jeffrey Bouchard as well. You've got to start to ask yourself, Dan, who is going to survive the climbs, and then who potentially could be involved in a very selective sprint. And all of those things only count if you manage to catch Rafa Majka, who's doing a fantastic job.
Exactly that. Sorry, I'm just sniggering to myself at the fact that it's detonated in this group and we've got
Totally.
19 kilometres of the climb to go. Stephen Kruijswijk's on a mission, isn't he?
He is.
Carlos Verona here on Movistar, unable to keep up with the Dutchman from Team Jumbo-Visma. It feels like that mission is just to go for the stage win. It doesn't feel like he's a satellite rider, Stephen Kruijswijk, for Primož Roglič later on. He's been given the freedom, so not only are they playing it quite calmly from a protecting your leader point of view in this race, but they're also allowing freedom to other riders to go for stage wins. We saw it, didn't we, with Sepp Kuss a couple of years ago, where he took his first Grand Tour stage win. He'd done an awful lot of work for Primož Roglič, and yet was still allowed to go up the road in a breakaway, and he took full advantage of it, and he managed to take a stage win there. Going back to the previous subject, Carlton, we were talking about longest solo escapades in recent years.
Oh, yeah.
Had a few people writing in. Benji Narson wrote in to say Mohoric, Poland, 2019, 60Ks. Evenepoel just the other day in a race in Belgium, 62Ks. Cavagna in California, 70. Froome at the Giro, apparently, Sean, was 80.3. Someone has made the calculation, and it's very precise. But Amati Puraili, who's well worth a follow on Twitter, said that Ruben Plaza at this race on stage 20 in 2015 won after 117.2 kilometres. And if Rafael Majka manages it today, his will be 87.4. So it won't set a record, but it will still be very impressive if he pulls this off.
And where was that 100-plus break? Which race was it?
This race.
Ah, beg your pardon.
Yeah, stage 20 of this race, the penultimate day 6 years ago. Gosh,
well, I guess we should remember, but there's been so much racing, and almost a disjoint as well. It's a strange one, isn't it? We've had the upset of compressed and then expanded and cancelled races, and due to COVID and a blight on the world of sport. I think we've survived it better than most sports, to be honest, because of course our arena is the world itself and the open roads, which is a blessing, but nonetheless it's foxed us in certain ways, or fogged us, I think, in some circumstance. You know, you were saying, Dan, that we were talking about, I think you were talking about Chris Froome's long range on Bardonecchia. It seems an awful long time ago. Maybe it's because we've pondered it so often, but time seems to have been bent just a little bit, possibly partially due to COVID. And, you know, you're saying about riders not knowing quite what day it was, or indeed where they are on occasion.
Yeah.
Town-wise, in a strange kind of way, it's happened to the cycling calendar, and indeed the years have sort of stretched and expanded. Some things you think happened 10 minutes ago, and they turn out to be years back, and vice versa. You know, those events that you think, oh, that's so historic, it's so enormous and it looms large in your mind, you think it must have been many, many years ago, and it turns out to be rather closer to the near horizon than you thought. It's strange what's going on.
It is really strange. I mean, how long ago does it feel that Roglic lost on the Pont de Belfi the Tour de France to Tadej Pogacar?
Yeah.
It was it less than a year ago? I can't remember when it finished now. It was obviously with the change of season due to COVID last year. The Tour de France took place far later than it normally does. I don't think it had finished until early September, so less than a year ago was that day, and after that we still had a Giro d'Italia and a Vuelta and a lot of classics still to go, and so much racing since then. You're right, it does feel like an eternity ago going back to some races. One I missed out actually in terms of solo escapades, I must mention, because the Tour de Suisse wrote to me about it, is Hugh Carthy on the Queen stage of their race 2 years ago. It was away for 98 Ks and took the win.
Good lad. Well,
I'll finish there, Carlton, because I'm sure I'll get loads more people writing in with long breakaways.
Don't forget, yeah, exactly. No surprise there that Hugh Carthy was a long ranger. It's a shame that he's not part of this race. Apparently, when he went training around the Trough of Bowland out and around Preston and that area, it's an area I know very well. Actually, it's beautiful. The Queen has a lodge there. Incidentally, and when once asked where she'd like to end her days, she actually said the Trough of Bowland. A lot of people had to go and look it up. It's a huge bowl just at the foot of the English Lakes. It's fantastic, very pretty. Go and visit the Inn at Whitewell. There's a free ad for the Inn at Whitewell. It's a stunning place, absolutely. I think Prince Edward lives nearby, but anyway, regardless of all of that, it's we have some varied terrain to play with, and we need to sort of settle our minds really and remind ourselves of the tasks at hand. But yeah, Hugh Carthy, they used to have to draw lots because he'd go auto pacing out of his club in Lancashire, and some of the tasks that he set himself, you know, up into the English Lakes, they were so long. Nobody wanted to do it. And so I don't know whether it was car paced or motorcycle paced. You find out. But honestly, some of the days that he used to decide to take the bike were horrible and grisly. And it's a real shame, personally speaking, that Hugh Carthy's not a bigger part of this race, because he's a great rider and he just came in almost pre-hobbled, it seemed, Sean. He wasn't where he needs to be.
No, certainly. We see him struggling very early in the race and on stages where you would expect him to have no difficulty at all. Just wasn't in the shape that he needed to be. And sometimes, you have a brilliant year, and last year, we had some performances from Hugh Carthy in this race, and this year comes about and suddenly he just cannot get the form he needed. And we did see in the Giro, of course, as well, he struggled a bit, so this season hasn't been an easy one for him at all. And it's disappointing, but he's a rider with experience, and hopefully he'll be able to just finish out this year and readjust and be back next year, because the champions that show they have this quality, they do not disappear in the matter of 12 months. They do come back again. And bike riders, as we know, Carlton, they're great fighters, and they just keep on fighting, keep on working at it. And if you do that and you have got the talent which he has shown, well, then he can repeat the performance he's done already, or better than.
Hope so. I'm sure he will. Sitting in front of him, Sean, when we came into this race, in terms of those, a lot of commentators anyway, thought that Mikkel Landa was going to have a really wonderful race, and it's turned out to be absolutely anything but. And there's a lot of big names that have found themselves wanting here.
Yes, well, Mikkel Landa, of course, again in the Giro, he had that huge crash where he broke collarbone and a number of ribs, a punctured lung. He was off the bike for a long time, and then when you get back, you're keen to get back, you train a lot, and the form comes back pretty quickly, and you get quite good, but then you get to that peak maybe a bit too quickly, and suddenly it drops off. And it's a problem that a lot of riders have, and I'd experienced myself in my career. When you get an injury and you're out, you're very keen to get back quickly, and maybe too quickly, and that is the big mistake. You have to take it patiently, slowly, build very gradually, build a good foundation, and then you can stay there. But it's a mistake, and the body is not used to that, and the rider himself, you're not used to it, so it's difficult to get it right. And it's a one where a lot of riders have that problem, where they're okay for a number of weeks, and then suddenly the form starts to leave them again.
I never peaked too early. I've had a 40-year build-up so far, in fact.
It'll come down. Just keep going, mate.
I've got another question for Sean Carlton. Did you hear Sean guess how many years it had been since Rafael Mike had last won a race?
Yeah, I did. There was a very, very big gap.
It was quite a long pause. I'm still slightly unsure as to whether he cheated or not. But I've got another question along the same lines. Sean,
listen out for the keys being done.
How long do you think it has been since Steven Kruijswijk won a pro race?
5 years.
Wrong. 2014, 7 years ago, and he's only had 2 pro wins in his whole career. Can you believe that?
That's an ouch. Do you know what, Dan? I'd have thought he'd have had something at the Giro in the meantime.
Yes, well, you would assume so, because he came so close to winning the thing.
Yeah.
You just assume that someone that's capable of almost winning a Grand Tour would have at least a handful of wins to their name. We're surprised when we see Romain Bardet before he started winning at the start of this month, only 7 wins to his name in his career before that. But yeah, Steven Kruijswijk, he took a win on stage 6 of the Tour de Suisse in 2011, so 10 years ago, and his only win since then has been at the Arctic Race of Norway in 2014. But for a rider of his quality, you'd just expect a bit more, wouldn't you? But
especially having led the Grand Tour as well.
Yeah, and I remember he went on a really long solo escapade at the Tour de France a few years ago when it finished up Alpe d'Huez, I seem to remember, and didn't quite come off for him. But he certainly put, I think it was Team Sky at the time, under a lot of pressure that day.
He did. Well, he potentially could put Rafa Majka under a lot of pressure, because if you start thinking about the test that they still got to take, and we've got a big one right now, let's not forget, 14.5 kilometres before we get to the top of it. We are already climbing. This is Majka who's pacing himself nicely, but the gap's only down to 1 minute and 41. And Kruijswijk may well be adjusting those stats that you've been talking about, Dan, right here, right now.
He might well be. It'd be great to see, wouldn't it? Because it would be horrible for him to get... Sorry, I'm trying to eat a chicken katsu curry at the same time. I thought we were going to go to Sean next. It's a late lunch, 2:20.
Second time I've caught you out. You keep swallowing.
Apologies for that. Yeah, it would be a shame. You know, he can be content with what he's achieved as a cyclist. He's been a quality rider that has been a part of some very big wins for his team over a number of different years. But it would just be the icing on the cake for him, wouldn't it, to actually have a Grand Tour stage win to his name. At the moment, totally a bit steady though, isn't it? 1 minute and 40 seconds to Majka, but he's got to believe, because he's saved a lot more energy in this race than Rafael Majka, who's been away for a long time now. He went with 88 k's to go, so already we're up to, 36 kilometres solo? That's going to take it out of him, so even if it doesn't come crashing down very quickly, as I'm sure he would like it to do, Steven Kruijswijk just has to believe in his own form, his own legs and his own quality as a rider.
Right, you have your katsu.
Thanks, mate. How long have I got?
You've got 12 k's, but before you get to have whatever you like.
But you just have a couple more mouthfuls.
You just dive in. Sean, I'm looking at that gap. Mike is doing a fantastic job of holding it just for the time being, but I'm starting to believe in Steven Kruijswijk today, and that's bringing me all kinds of cheer. For the stats, not least that we've just reminded ourselves, but lovely to see.
Yes, it is lovely to see, and Mike, going out so early in the stage, it was a difficult one to see that he could hold on, but looking more and more like he can do now with 13 kilometres to the top of this climb, and then he have a long descent, 15 kilometres, maybe a bit more, a bit in the valley, another 10 or 12 kilometres, and then on to that final climb of the day. So we will see very quickly in the next number of kilometres that he can hold on.
We're just pondering, welcome back everybody, that whether or not Steven Kruijswijk is going to catch Rafa Majka. We've just been reminded, possibly while some of you are away, how long it's been since Steven Kruijswijk has actually taken a win, despite leading the Giro d'Italia in 2017. It's been even further back than that. So, yeah, Kruijswijk, one of those names that we constantly conjure with and expected a lot from, and maybe in our mind's eye we kind of believe that he'd had a few more wins than perhaps he actually had. The breakaway has detonated. We've got Intermarché Wanty doing a fantastic job of protecting the leader's jersey on behalf of Odd Christian Eiking, who wears red, loud and proud, and he's sitting in front of Primož Roglič and the boys from Jumbo-Visma, who have changed their strategy in this year's race, and very much not trying to dominate it, and are finessing the race, I think it's fair to say. They had earlier on today Sepp Kuss up in the breakaway. Right now they've got Steven Kruijswijk, and say this quietly, he's finding seconds by seconds on Rafa Majka, and of the two of them you probably think that Kruijswijk could sustain this climb a little bit better. He's out of the saddle, Rafa Majka is planted in it, and the gap it's narrowing, but very, very gently. In fact, as I say, it's sort of bouncing as an extension. So let's see what Rafa Majka can produce in response to this man. Both a couple of very, very good diesels. It may well come down to just how good they are at descending in a few moments' time. Descending, a big part of any big climbing day, and today we've got some very big descents, and a crucial one at the end of the day, Sean. It could come down to who's got the best punchy sprint.
Yes, but I'm afraid unless we can see somebody coming up from behind out of that original group that Steven Kruijswijk's after leaving, but if it's between the two men who are leading on the road at the moment, I think if Kruijswijk gets to Rafa Majka, well then he is going to ride away from on that final climb, third category, before we have the short run to the finish. But we can see 12.7 kilometres. This is a long, long one. The gradient is not, very steep, but still, what the riders have been doing today, they've been out there in this breakaway for a long time now. And Majka, he's been out for a long one, and if he can keep this one going, this will be one of the big rides of his career. We see him in the Tour of France a number of years ago doing these solo rides, but this one, if he manages to pull it off, it will be a tremendous ride.
Let's hear from Guillaume Martin, shall we?
Il est toujours deuxième du classement général ce matin, Guillaume Martin.
Well, second in the GC this morning. Guillaume, you took about 4 seconds yesterday. You saw Eiking wasn't in great shape, so you asked Remy Rojas to accelerate. Tell us what happened.
Je voyais qu'effectivement il était dans les dernières
so Eiking was at the back of the bunch, and that in the steep climb he was struggling, so I tried to make the race harder. We climbed it quite fast, and there was a strong headwind, so nobody would attack, so we went very fast, and I have no regrets. It's not the last time compared to Roglic, even if he's getting closer. It was a good day, and I'll see what happens today. So you just never know. He himself, Guillaume Martin, says haven't lost any time to Roglic, so he feels like he's going well. What would be your strategy to get the red jersey before the rest day? Well, it doesn't depend on me. It depends on the pace and the pace that everyone else sets. If Eiking has good legs or not, he is hanging in there, and I'm always between taking back time on the red jersey without losing time on my rivals, and I've just got to keep in mind that I'm trying to have a good position in the GC standings. We arrive in 1 week in Santiago de Compostela, and so Compostela is going to come very, very quickly, so I don't want to risk everything today just to wear a red jersey. That's interesting. So thinking the long game, don't worry, it's not raining. I think this is a dropped bidon that you're witnessing here. A little bit of splash. It may well be some of the running fans here. That was nice, actually. The fan there did ask if he'd like some water thrown all over him. Quite often they don't, Sean, and that can be a distraction.
Yes, well, it can be a distraction, but the throwing of water you're talking about, I presume? Yes, well, I think, in those conditions, if it's a nice fresh drop of water, it's always welcome, because it does give you that little bit of a cooling effect. And, we did talk about that the last number of days. The temperatures have come down from what we had 2-3 days ago, and that will be, very much welcome by the riders, because today, if you had really warm conditions touching the 40s, well, this would be a real killer, and we'd lose a lot more riders because of that. So when it comes down that 8 degrees, 7, 8 degrees, 9 degrees, it's a great relief for the riders, and you can adjust to that very well. Coming from very warm conditions to cooler conditions, it's easy to do, where if you come from the cold conditions to the warm conditions, it's a lot more difficult to adapt for the riders.
Just looking at those who've we perhaps thought would function better. That was Jon Izagirre, brother of Gorka, who was up the road. So clearly not Jon today. And there's Mikkel Landa, been struggling and hanging on at the back here. And there are others faring worse than him. Tom Pidcock was just up ahead there, by the way. Also Landa, not enjoying life at the moment.
Sorry, Carlton. Yep. Landa has been giving out the tickets for the bus there for quite a long time. He's on the rear of the main peloton. And I think he's, I think business class, first class tickets are all gone by now.
Rob Stannard as well here, just peddling squares. I think you're absolutely right. And his best seats are at the back. Well, they used to be on the coach, but at the moment that's where Landa is sitting and just looking at the rear end today. Dan, have we worked out what the cut-off is likely to be?
Oh, I haven't actually. No, I'm not sure.
I know you love that.
I do, yeah. I should have got onto it. I will have a look into it once I finish commentating with 40 Ks to go, and I shall let you know. Because, with the speed that they've been going at the front, it could potentially be slightly harder to get inside the time limit today. The only good thing you could say about it for the sprinters was that because there was no breakaway by the time we got to the foot of the first climb, they were still attached to the front of the race at that point, so it gives them a bit more leeway. We saw De Koenig quick step at the Tour de France, didn't we, trying to make sure that the gap wasn't too big from the breakaway to the group, because if you start at even more of a disadvantage, it's even harder to get inside the time limit, so they would have been thankful for that at least. I also noticed that Nelson Oliveira is one of the riders just dropped a few moments ago. He's one of the riders from Team Movistar. We saw him crash, didn't we, on the stage where Dylan van Baarle hit the deck and took a number of riders down with him. So he had some scars from that. That might be affecting how he's feeling on the bike right now. In fact, probably is, but what it does mean is that there's just 4 Movistar riders in the actual peloton there. So Mas and Lopez, plus Rojas, and also Aviti, I think, is still there as well.
And we've got quite an attrition rate at the moment, considering we've got the rest day tomorrow. Riders not able to bridge to that. We lost Richard Carapaz today, didn't finish yesterday actually, but a second one from Ineos Grenadiers in Narvaez as well, pulled out today. So both Ecuadorians, I don't read anything into that, but are indeed out of the race. And so, as it is, Ineos Grenadiers are hampered a little bit.
Well, you say not to read too much into it. I think Carapaz has got a private jet home, and Narvaez is thinking, I don't want to go cattle class.
Do you think that's true?
No, I'm joking. was that your theory?
Yes, it crossed my mind.
No, I'm just making stuff up.
I was thinking, somebody else believes in this same theory as well. Yeah. There we are. Yes, it did actually. A little light went on. I think Richard Carapaz wants to go home and bask in the glory of Olympic championship, Olympic gold medal.
Who would blame him?
Exactly that. So if there is a spare seat in his private jet, Tobias is there. I'm sure they're taking regular airlines, but you never know.
Well, who was it Caicedo that pulled out a couple of days ago as well?
Yeah.
He's from the same. He's Ecuadorian, isn't he?
He is. There's a jet.
It could be
going.
a full jet.
I think you might have hit on something. No, we want to know their travel arrangements.
Oh dear. Sorry, we should get back to the race.
We should.
It's ticking down. It's ticking down slowly, isn't it, between Steven Kruijswijk and Majka? It was 1 minute 40 seconds about 5 minutes ago. It's now 1:33. But what we do know about Steven Kruijswijk, he's a diesel engine, isn't he? I'm not saying that Rafael Majka hasn't got a good engine and one that can go on for a long time, but he has been out there for many kilometres already. And Steven Kruijswijk, he can go on and on and on. That's what makes him such a great helper for Primož Roglič and the other riders that lead the Jumbo-Visma squad. So I think he definitely won't give up. He'd like this gap to be coming down quicker than it is as things stand, but I think he'll still be reasonably confident that he can at some point over these climbs bring it back.
I hope so. It would be nice to see that contest, but a little bit of me would wish that Majka continues to hold on. He's doing a great job at the moment. Just been monitoring the gap between them. 10 seconds have been found in the last 4 kilometres. That's either a sterling effort of Rafael Majka just to continue with the pace, or indeed Steven Kruijswijk has actually done some maths here and is making a great job of making inroads into Rafael Majka. Read it as you will. Majka's out of the saddle for the first time in the climb, just as we approach an 8% margin, so no surprise there. Perhaps we'll see if he gets planted again and is any more comfortable by the time we get to the top. I've got a feeling that the way the clock is going at the moment, the danger would be, Sean, if when we do get to the peak, that the gap is down to about a minute. Kruijswijk has had his moments on descending. Luckily, there's no snowdrifts for him to disappear into. Sorry.
Don't be so hard, please.
Let's hope he stays on his bike, because I think Richard Kruijswijk's got a great chance of winning today, Sean. And the way he's winding him in, he's doing it in a very appropriate manner. He's not trying to bridge over quickly and then have to offer Raf Majka turns. And if Kruijswijk is happier on his own than Majka is at the moment, that's a wise decision.
Yes, well, I think Kruijswijk, as you've said there, he's a diesel, but Majka also, when he's on form, he can just grind away on the climbs. He's probably more explosive if he need to be, but he doesn't have to do anything like that. He just keep on working at it, and 129 an advantage. We're still quite a lot. I think maybe around the 9-10 kilometres to the top of this climb. So yeah, there's a lot can happen in that distance, and it's all about Majka now. How good is he today? Will he be able to hold on going at the pace he has been going in the early part of this climb? Kreiswijk, he's going to set out there and just try and close down, but you can see there 130 is not coming down I think as Kreiswijk would like it to be. So if Micah can keep working as he has been, he should be able to hold on to this and get the stage victory. And the descent as well, Kreiswijk, as you mentioned, Carlton, he doesn't descend very well, where Mike is a very good descender, so he'll probably pull a bit more out there. And yeah, it will depend all at the top of this climb now, and the next number of kilometres. We can see 8.2 to the top. It's a long ways for all, and it's all about how much you have got, how much the energy levels are at the moment. And a guy can be good, give him another kilometre, and then suddenly he starts to to lose his power, and it can leave you so quickly.
Dan, as well, Ralph Micah, he's won races where he's not necessarily been the strongest, and if this does get tactical, even if it's just one man against another, the odds swing his way. He's a very clever rider apart from anything else.
He can be, yeah. He's certainly had his moments over his career. Stephen Kreiswijk definitely isn't quick to the line. He's got no real sprint on him whatsoever. Micah's not particularly quick either, so it could be an interesting two-up sprint if we get to that point in time. But as things stand, doesn't look that way. Minute and 31, it's stagnating, isn't it? The gap between the two riders. I'm sure they're both putting an equal amount of effort in at this point. Although, having said that, the last close-up picture we got of Micah's face, you really could see the effort he was putting in, both with the sweat rate and also the grimace that was etched across it. So, as Sean has just said, you never know when it's going to catch up with you. Such a long solo escape like we're seeing from Micah today. It can come at any time, and it can be quite hard to, even though you're on your own, it can be hard to remember to drink and to eat enough. So let's hope that Micah's done enough of that.
It is a long day. I mean, Sean, you're probably getting pressure sores from sitting in the chair. The commentary position, it is a big old day for them to take on, and indeed all credit to our audience who've been with us throughout the day, but I'm not surprised you've stuck with it because it's been so dramatic. This has been a fantastic display as well. I know that we've talked often throughout the day about Intermarché Wanty, but they've ridden with great wisdom, Sean, for a team that perhaps we were thinking were an assembly of not the brightest gems. I don't mean to be down with faint praise, despite the fact it sounds very much like that. What I'm trying to say is that they had to pick their team judiciously to have any chance of success, and they found it brilliantly so.
Yes, well, they have been, riding real well, and today they're, putting in a real strong performance. We can see Jan Hirt there on the front. He's been riding excellently and kilometre after kilometre and doing what they need to do. Just keep the pace, quite strong. We did see on the descent as well, they were pushing very fast, and if your race leader is very confident on the descent, you have the confidence of the riders in front of you, you can afford to do that and maybe pull back a bit on the descent. A lot of the time we see with the race leader, if he's not confident on the descent or they don't need to take risk, they go down a lot slower than the breakaway out front, but it looked like they were going down faster than the breakaway. But of course the breakaway was a bit special today. They were playing about a lot and looking at each other, and went on forever until we see that group getting up the road with 4 or 5 riders with Kreiswijk, and then he got out and alone since then. But they're doing Intermarché, they're doing what they need to do. And when you look at the riders they have got here, when he got the red jersey, you'd be always concerned they'd be able to control the race for him. And the rider himself, he is doing an excellent job as well, because to be able to hold on to the jersey for this amount of time, Chris Aching, he is really risen to the occasion. And to be a question now today, what happened in the end. If there's a big battle, I said in the earlier part of the day, between the GC favourites, then he might have difficulty. But if it's not really a big one, and we're getting ever so far up this climb, and they're still making it quite a strong pace, so that will settle the ship here between the big favourites, and he could hold on for red jersey for another day into the rest day tomorrow.
Credit where it's due as well, boys. 82R Citroën, they've been extremely busy deep into this race. We saw Nicolas Prodhomme doing a great job trying to offer up an alternative for Clément Chapoussin yesterday. they've really been extremely busy, and they've still got Geoffrey Bouchard, who's well placed for today, potentially for a podium. Don't know whether it'll be any more than that. But there are some teams here, Dan, that haven't got stage wins yet, and you tend to often dwell too long on hard and fast results and ignore the fact that teams make a great contribution throughout an entire day, and AG2R Citroën have been lively in this race.
Exactly that, and it's easy to get to the end of a Grand Tour and list out the teams that haven't won a stage, but obviously it hasn't been for want of trying, and as you've just said, AG2R have made a great fist of that. I mean, Prudhomme, I never expected what he did yesterday on the roads to the stage finish. He came very close to taking a stage victory. Would have been a big surprise, but he was out there giving it his best. He wasn't just content to sit in a break with some big name riders. He went on the attack on a couple of occasions and came very close, as I said, and he had Champoussin behind him as well. So they've been trying very hard. It's an almost entirely French lineup that they've brought here, apart from Stan de Wolf, the Belgian. Whether or not it's going to come good for them today doesn't look that way, does it, with the riders that we've got out front now? But I'm just actually trying to look on the live tracker to see where everyone else is just behind this, well, the two that we've been looking at, Raphael Majka and Steven Kruijswijk, because I haven't seen where they are on our screen. We can see a number of them are about to be caught.
Yep, indeed. They are, and I think that might be Storer as part of this duo right now, if I'm not mistaken. Let's have a look in a few moments' time. Guy Niv, also almost unmentioned today. When you have such a big breakaway, there are some riders that don't often shout out at you, and no disrespect to them, but there's been so much going on today. Big drive through here by Intermarché. Wanty doing a fabulous job. I think having the primary sponsor suddenly taking over, we're generally now calling them Intermarché as opposed to Wanty, and there's still a bit of reflection to that. Again, you can't, sometimes teams have extraordinarily long names. Androni Giacottoli, Deco Giovanni, Serramente, Venezuela was the longest I can remember. Do you remember that one, Dan?
I do. I don't remember it being pronounced quite like you just did, but it's something along those lines. I know you're talking about. Let's put it that way. Right, I'm on the. Yeah, well, they're notorious for having an incredible billboard of sponsors on their jerseys, aren't they? Behind Steven Kruijswijk, about a minute, we've got one chaser apparently, Chris Hamilton. A further minute behind that, we've got Lopez Perez of Trek Segafredo, Bouchard and Carlos Verona. And then just a handful of seconds behind that, Brambilla Petilli of Intermarché Wanty Gobert. Oh, that's just changed actually on my screen. It says Gorka Izagirre and Michael Storer now in that group just behind. So they're spread all across this climb in effect.
They are. And you can see as well some of those teammates, particularly as the hard-working DSM. I mean, a more hard-working team you'd be hard-pushed to find, quite frankly, despite what we said about AG2R Citroën. Some of you taking a break, 5 minutes to the top of this peak. Riders all over the place, and no surprise about that. To be honest, I guess the one surprise would be how cohesive it's been up until this point, considering the terrain that we've been through, Sean.
Yes, well, it's proving to be a real difficult day, and we can see the breakaway there. Two of the DSM riders just going out through the rear end of the peloton so quickly. Tussfeldt and Aronsman, but they have done their job here. They got into the breakaway and they tried to be in the front of affairs, and I think the main man, of course, for the team DSM, would have been Michael Storer, but he's not performing as well as maybe we were expecting him to do, considering the results and the rides he's done in this year's race already. But it's a real killer of a day, and we can see the way the riders are starting to lose contact here. And the interesting one as well, the group further down the road wanted to make it inside the time limit. They're going to have a difficult day. They're going to have to keep on working at it big time to try and be inside the time limit. If you're not on your best and you cannot stay in that buses behind, well, then you can be in trouble. The only thing in their favour would be that first 50 kilometres where they got to the first climb of the day all in the peloton, so it makes it a bit easier, but still a big day and a very testing day for all.
Just going back to DSM, Sean, I think this might relate back to the strategy that Nico told us about last week, where we had Chad Hager up the road, didn't we? And when they knew that it wasn't going to be the break that fought it out for the stage victory, they called him back, said, don't waste your energy, save it, and save it for another day. And I think that might be what they've just done on this stage today. You know, those riders up front, they've done their job for Michael Storer and for Chris Hamilton. They've drifted back to the bunch, straight out the other end, and Romain Bardet was also looking behind him as well. I think they've just said to them, don't waste any more energy by trying to stick in this GC favourites group. Just sit up, not that far from the top of the climb, cruise into the finish. We'll have a rest day tomorrow, and you'll live to fight another day and have more energy for those other days after the rest day and in the final week of this race. Also noticed actually that Movistar, I think, are down to just Mas and Lopez from what I've just seen at the front of the main GC favourites group. Of course, they've got Verona up the road, but what it means for those two is they've got no one able to go back and get bottles. Saw Dylan van Baarle filling up his pockets with bottles for Bernal, Yates and his other teammates just a few moments ago. Mas and Lopez, should I say, will have to hope they've got some people on the side of the road, because they don't want to be making those trips themselves.
Yeah, and unlikely to make them for each other either at the moment. Miguel Angel Lopez probably starting off as the favoured rider of the two of them, I think, before this race began. But Enric Mas is kind of, it looks like he's riding back into his best form, and certainly looks happy in that regard. Good vibe between him and Roglic actually at the moment. Welcome back. Just been pondering those who are still left as teammates that are able to help out in the drive for the top today, and Dan Lloyd reminding us of Nico Roche's insight into Team DSM and their great strategy at moments like this of just not investing when the return is likely to be minimal. And as a result, despite the fact they've been working for Storer and Hamilton, two other support riders from within the team have been called back, and Romain Bardet himself not going to assemble any more polka dot jersey points, but the threat, I think, of Damiano Caruso has ebbed as well in that regard. He's not up front, and as a result, take it easy, boys. Let's start our rest day now, but make sure you don't get timed out at the back. You can see as well the wind over the top. We are on the lee side of this hill, and it's really, really blowing. Now, it's picking up to about 18 and 20 kilometres per hour, and that doesn't account for gusts. Let us just hope that in these dry conditions we don't have the road looks quite grippy, so I think that's a favour to us. See, there's a lot of dirt upon the road as well. I was just starting to worry about dust, the sort of dust that we were already talking about just before Primož Roglic lost his back wheel. Because the descent is going to be vital for Rafa Majka, and of course for Steven Kruijswijk. At the moment it's being held at a margin of a minute and 33. The terrain is just starting to peak and trough here. We've got 3 kilometres until we get to the top. Majka's just been over an 8%er. It's kicked down a little bit to about 5.5, 5.7. It does pick up again to 6 and then 8 to the line, but he looks to be riding well within himself at the moment. Dan, your final thoughts before you head off? I understand you're going to be on the sofa today, but what about this pairing? Will they come together on the descent?
Doesn't look like it, does it?
No,
I mean,
not at all.
It's held unbelievably steady the whole way up this climb. It's barely wavered from the 1 minute 31, 1:32 time gap that we're seeing now the whole way up. I am surprised about that. I thought Steven Kruijswijk would have a bit more energy in his legs, having been in the wheels longer than Rafael Majka today, but that hasn't been the case. And Majka, we have still got a bit of climbing to come, but the majority of it is well behind him now. So 2.6 k's to go to the top of this climb. The third category climb is not hugely difficult, and as Sean pointed out, I think of the two of them, he's the better descender, so he could hope to increase his gap there. Yeah, it would be remarkable if he manages to pull this off. I think 87 point something kilometres was when he found himself alone at the front of this race, so it'd be the longest solo stage victory at a Grand Tour for quite some time if he does, and he's looking good at the moment. If I had to sort of nail a flag to the mast, it would I'd say that Mike is going to take this.
Kind of looks that way, doesn't it? And what an amazing result that would be. Oh, we're busy herding the wildlife yet again. I do feel sorry for them, but just look at the way that they can just skip up these inclines.
It is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I don't know if you've ever seen these beasts on dam walls licking the salt out of the mortar. It is just remarkable. They skip over the the mountains as if they're not there. And at the moment, Rafa Majka is doing pretty much the same thing. Amazing. Thanks, Dan. You'll be able to hear more from Dan Lloyd on the sofa with Orla at the end of today. I'll be staying with Sean until the resumption or the conclusion of hostilities here today. It's kind of gone a bit quiet, Sean, but I feel like we're just on a precursor for yet another moment of action when we come up and over the top, and we engage in a long descent, another one.
Yes, I think it's going to be the stage for Rafa Majka now. 133. Kruijswijk is not really pulling it all back, and he did when he set out at first, the first maybe 2-3 kilometres, it looked like he might start to eat into the advantage, but he's settled, I think, on the climb, and Majka is holding on very well. And when you look at the descent here, it's a long one, and the final climb is not much of a one. And the way Majka is going, if he did struggle here on the final 5k big time, and then got onto the descent maybe with a minute or 40 seconds ahead of Kruijswijk, you would be concerned that on the final third category one that he might really fall apart, but it doesn't look like it, and I think he should be able to go all the way now. And this long descent, he'll get a bit of recovery time as well, and 1 minute 35 is starting to just grow out gradually from Kruijswijk here. So that is the surprise. I thought Kruijswijk would really put in a big fight here and pull a lot of time on Majka back, but it just shows that Majka is on a big performance today.
Certainly is. Just over 4 kilometres of climbing he will have at the end today. I know that the climb is registered at 8.6 in length and averages 4%, but it's very, very easy on the approach. In fact, it's almost flat before you get to the bit that matters. This is the Category 3 test, over which there is then a downhill run more or less all the way to home. I think there's a flat section of about 4 kilometres at the very end, possibly not even that. So the attack point of the day was always going to be up and over the top of the climb that we're just about to peak, or Majka is, in 1,300 metres time. Whether there'll be any fracturing and attacks raining in amongst the red jersey group, it doesn't look that way after such a long day and such a difficult race on the approach to the second rest day, which is of course tomorrow. So the man who had a plan to go all in, Rafa Majka, you're looking at him right now, and it may well be that he shoved his chips on the table and he's just hoovered up absolutely everything. This man, Steven Kruijswijk, also went all in, but was missing an ace up his sleeve, I think, and the gap has gone back down, and dramatically so, back down to the minute and 40, and that's just about the gap that they had at the beginning of this climb, Sean.
Yes, well, that's what it's been, and it hasn't changed that 5 or maybe 8 seconds of a change. First of all, for Kruijswijk, he did pull that bit back, but then it seemed to get pretty much evens for many kilometres there. You could see Majka was holding on to the advantage, and now 137 to 140. It's looking like Majka, if he can keep it safe now on the descent. His director sportif was very, very anxious there, and sounded a bit nervous for me, but Majka calm there and just taking his gels, taking the bottles, and just continuing on at what he needs to do, at the pace he needs to continue. And that's all about experience. If you're the young guy there, you could really upset him, make him get him he gets a bit carried away, overexcited, and then it could start falling apart. But with Majka, he's got the experience, and as we talked about, experience can be very important at times.
Certainly can be. So he's about to start an 18-kilometre descent. He's got 2 steps within it on the way down. Be reasonably technical, but more than within his capabilities. And as we mentioned earlier, Steven Kruijswijk is not the most confident of descenders, as of course borne witness to by unfortunately him crashing out in the lead of the Giro a few years ago. So as a result, Majka, I think, is in a very happy place, and he's gelling up here, Sean. Not because he wants them now, but because he knows it's going to be very hard to take them if he's going all in over the top here, which he's bound to do. He's very, very close. I'm not suggesting he's sniffing the finish line. He's only got 1:38, and with 38.5 kilometres to go, you're thinking, well, surely, how can you call that right now? Look at the wind behind him. It's a tailwind as he comes in over the top. As soon as he goes round the mountain, however, it's going to be very different because there are quite a few switchbacks for him to take, and suddenly he is in a much more comfortable place than anyone else on this mountain. It's a long descent that takes him inexorably all the way to the foot of the final climb of the day with 14 kilometres to go. That climb won't be a worry to him, and then there's another descent back down to the line. So of the day remaining, he has, to my mind, got 3.5 kilometres of climbing left, and all the rest is descending, Sean, and he's not a bad descender, and that's why we think he'll win.
Yes, well, we see, it's 3:38 at the moment, and now he's onto the descent, and you could see there he was stacking up with gels, and if he needed fresh bottles he would have taken them as well, and there's a long descent now for him, and then before we start the last climb, it's the bar is closed. About 15 kilometres I think is today, or 14.5 when we start that short tour category climb. And also you get the advantage of that little sticky gel, the sticky bottle on the uphill, and it all helps, and you're going to do that, use that, and we can see that he's done that and taken the gels many times on this climb, and that's the advantage when you're out in front. We always talk about a breakaway on a difficult day in the mountains when it's really warm. You can get your car to come to you so easy. Where you're back in the peloton, you have to go back to the end of that group. It looks like Micah should be able to go all the way now. I can't see anything stopping him today.
Just shy of 90 kilometres it was to go that he went for it with an enormous test still to have. It's going over the top of the Category 2 test all the way down into the valley, and then kicking on up the Category 1, which we have just dealt with right now, the Mijares. He then comes down here, and watch him descend. This is just a joyous moment for him, and this is the main body of what remains, is this descent that will take him down through the intermediate sprint, series of little rolling parkour to take us to the base of our final climb, of which the first 4 kilometres doesn't exceed 2.5%. He'll skip up that. He then has the none too small matter of, I guess you might say if he was under pressure, of having 5 kilometres of climbing before he has a final descent all the way into town. So of the day that remains, the climbing that he still has to do is about 4.5 kilometres. So of those 36, the rest of it is downhill, and he's in a happy place. And guess what? He's actually expanded the gap on Stephen Kruijswijk, who we know is a bit tighter when it comes to descending. Not as confident. I hope, of course, he gets down here nice and cleanly. But the gap's likely to be up, nudging towards about 2 minutes, I would have said, Sean, by the gap between Micah and Kruijswijk at the foot, if their descending prowess is to be factored in.
Yes, and I don't think Kruijswijk is going to push it too much, because he knows that 1 minute and 45 with this long downhill, and then that short tour category climb of approximately 4 kilometres with a very low gradient. He knows that it's not going to happen for him, and now it's just about getting to the finish, place on the podium. But Kruijswijk will be disappointed, a rider of that calibre, when you're in the breakaway. But sometimes you feel real good, and you're very confident as you go through the stage. But then you come up against a super rider on the day he's on, one of these dream days where he just puts in a real excellent performance, and you cannot match him. And Kruijswijk, that's what happened to him today. Micah is being he's just ridden a super stage here today.
Here we go. A little bit of shenanigans going on right now as they come up for the minor points, and Team DSM are making sure that some spare points don't drift too far away to the rivals of Bardet. So some good teamwork going on there. I imagine that was Storage just having a quick look as we went over the top. Category 1 as well. Let's remind ourselves, Sean, that Rough Micah will be building a fine roster of points in the King of the Mountains jersey as well. after today. He's taken the 2 category 1, or at least a 1 and a 2 class. He's got a 3rd class coming up as well. He was on 25 points, 26 points now. So into 3rd place in that competition, rocking up from 30th. And a reminder that there are other events going on, very different weather, as you can see. The northern part of the European continent is a bit grisly, let's put it that way. Wet and I don't know, dreich, I think they say in Scotland. But as you can see, a whole raft of mizzle is falling down upon them. Meanwhile, so if you want to go and watch the Tour of Germany, then please feel free to do so. But honestly, I'd want to keep it here if I were you, because the descent may well prove to hold some drama for those in arrears. And apart from that, it's just really nice, if you are experiencing bad weather wherever you happen to live, to just at least dream of sunshine that these guys are experiencing. And the spotlight's on this man. The big light in the sky is shining brightly upon Rafa Majka, and what a performance this has been, Sean.
Yes, well, it's turning out to be a real big day for Rafa Majka, and an excellent ride, and setting off so early in the stage, you're always concerned, what's going to happen behind with that big breakaway. Would they hold him, at an advantage where they could close him down when they get into the longer climbs? But he did pull out quite a substantial lead, and there was never any organisation in the chase. They were, looking at each other. Nobody wanted to commit, and then they started attacking each other. Riders going away, then they all coming back together again, looking at each other. In the meantime, Majka was working away at getting a big advantage, and we can see now that the advantage he has got, he's just going to take no risk on the descent, and you can see that he's not really pushing on the descent. He doesn't have to, as we talked about Kreiswick as well. He doesn't take any risk because there's no gain. But yeah, it's a stage that Majka, it will bring back memories when he won these stages solo in the Tour of France a number of years ago.
Verona looked like he'd been back to the car and stacked up with bottles for his teammates who are within this group. Notably Mas, of course, and Miguel Angel Lopez, so they will get service and sustenance courtesy of Verona, who's now just been tagged by the red jersey group, as you can see. Majka takes 10 points. You'll see what that does to him overall. He vaults Stora into 3rd place in the King of the Mountains jersey competition. Bardet still leads that by a margin of 19 points over Damiano Caruso, so a wise thing for him to back out of today, save his resources, and presumably invest in Covadonga, maybe on the 2 category 1 test. Bardet will be busy on stage 17, you can be sure, Sean.
Yes, he will, and he'll have to get busy because Majka is now come into the equation in that mountain classification, and we see Bardet in the earlier part of the stage this morning. He was in that big move as the start when it was very rapid racing, and it did not work out, and we talked about that in the earlier part of our programme. The riders who made the effort in the very early 50 kilometres when they were racing at such a fast rate, they all paid the price, and Majka was the one. I think he probably just sat back there, waited, and a lot of the riders that found themselves in that breakaway later when we got into the more mountainous part, and Majka, he's going to take his stage win, but he's also going to move up and become a challenger for the mountain jersey.
Well, he's got another climb to take. What's interesting is that Steven Kruijswijk is descending extremely well. I guess when you have the road isn't that shrouded, Sean, it's not masked by trees, and that gives you the benefit of getting some vision about the corners that are about to present themselves to you. And also, if you're coming down a very big mountain, which we are at the moment, you get more vision of the corners. As you can see, it kind of flattens out just a little bit. This is a step that I was telling you about as part of the descent. Gap's a minute and 38. So Kruijswijk's making a good fist of this. It's more or less held as a margin.
Yes, well, he is holding there, and Majka, as I said, I don't think he's too concerned about what's happening behind with Kruijswijk at that 138, 140, which it was a moment ago. We can see Kreiswijk here the way he's going. He's not prepared to take any risk, and there's no point now because he knows the situation in front of him. He also knows the situation behind. So just keep it together and get through this day, and get on the podium. But it's always a disappointing one when you're in a breakaway. You look at the riders are there, and you say, well, I can take this victory today. I think I am the better one over this sort of terrain. And then you come up against a rider like Micah, who had been out for a long time, many kilometres before Kreiswijk struck out, but he still holds on, and that's what Micah is doing. He's just continuing on at a very strong rate, not really weakening at all, and you can see 136 at the moment. It's going to be a stage victory for Rafa Micah.
Certainly is. We're heading down into the tree line, as you can possibly tell, away from the sort of scorched rock that we've been over the top. The temperature today has ebbed a little bit, down to 27, and that's a pleasant temperature compared to some of the heat that we've had. Odd Chrissy Eiking, a Norwegian, probably delighted by that. He'll also be really warmed by the way his team have ridden, which is with great maturity for a team that was rapidly assembled. They really are a cohesive unit, and it's nice to see them working so well. Meanwhile, here is Micah, and he can pick all the lines at the moment. The danger is following the motorcycle. That'll be a very different series of apexes for that security bike. At the moment, that bike will be punching a little bit of a hole in the air. Nice bike on the flatter sections, more than happy to drive through them, and in fact he's just finding a little bit of time on Rafa Micah, but with 27.7 kilometres to go and storm clouds gathering in the high ground, I think we're going to get away without any rain today. Let's hope that that's the case. We're nearly home, Sean. 27.5 after what was a very long day, just 2 kilometres shy of the 200.
Yes, a long day and a difficult day. When you look at the profile of the stage this morning, it was always going to be a difficult day. No matter what way the race went on, it's an energy sapping day for all here, but they raced very fast in the earlier part, so it hasn't been an easy day. And I think the reason we see such an active start, and it was great to see from the kilometre zero the way they raced today, because we had coverage all through the stage. Like the battle went on, the rate they were going, all of that is going to affect the riders. But they have a rest day tomorrow, and I think that was in the minds of a lot of riders as well. The way they raced very aggressively today compared to yesterday, the break was allowed to get away with quite easily. Today it was a big fight, and it was the stronger riders. When we got into the climbs, that's when the break was formed, and it's been another energy sapping day. But the temperatures has been a great relief for the riders. The way it had come down in the last number of days, because on Thursday we had that unbelievable temperatures in Cordoba. Friday we also had very high temperatures in the 36s at the finish. Yesterday and today, a big relief to the riders that has cooled down temperature wise a lot.
Thank heaven. Looks like if we do get storms, it may well be that they wash over during the rest day. So a nice cool day, which usually often means a nice quiet night for the riders, whether they've been blessed with air conditioning in their hotels or not. That's a bit of a bagatelle.
Well, they will have a long journey tonight, because we've got the transfer, and it's approximately 500 kilometres by bus. So the day is not over when the riders finish this very difficult stage. They have to have their shower and then get on the bus, 500 kilometres. And people do not realise that it's riding the stage, but you have these transfers because of the rest day. The organisers a lot of the time in the big 3-week tours, these huge transfers to get to the rest day point, and they're doing it this evening here in the Vuelta.
Might be a private car for the likes of old Christian Eiking today, because he's got the uncomfortable task for some, especially at the moment like today, going into a rest day with a big transfer, Sean. He's got media duties as leader of the race, something that Primož Roglič has been blessedly relieved to have been relieved of those duties.
Yes, well, that is it's all part of the energy saving, and we talk about offloading the race leader's jersey, the red jersey in the case here in the Vuelta. And people say, why did they do that? But as you say, Carlton, not having to do all the press duties after the finish. If you're race leader, you have to go to the podium. So it means you get away from the finish much earlier every day, and all of that adds up over a number of days. And also in the race, the team that's leading, they're going to control the race quite a lot, if not all, and that's worked out for Jumbo-Visma very well in the last number of days, where the team of Intermarché Wanty has been controlling the race for a big part of the stages.
We're here with the Chaser, but I think it's camera one, because this camera bike is doing a much better job than the one that's on Rafa Majka. There was a moment there where Majka wanted to take a right-hander, and the camera bike just came up on the inside and was squeezed a bit, and I must admit I was a bit worried. You possibly heard me. I thought my mic was off. Sorry. I do fret for them, Sean, the riders. We know how fragile human beings are on a bicycle at the sort of pace that they're dealing with at the moment.
Yes, well, we all do, and when you're looking at the final of stages, especially in the sprints, and when I look at the sprints there, and it's all moving and fighting for positions, it's nervous times, and also on those descents when you see the riders going down at unbelievable rates, and they come into corners that look like they're going to have difficulty getting around it. Watch it on TV, I can tell you it's much more stressful than being on the bike.
22.6 kilometres from home, and just making sure he doesn't go the wrong way. We've seen that as well this year. Riders just unfortunately being misguided on occasion into a junction, and of course when you are this fatigued as well, I think Majka seems to want to get away from all the verbal haranguing that he's getting at the moment. He knows what he's got to do. I don't think he needs much more encouragement, but anyway, your mind can start to wander just a little bit, Sean, when you've been out there this long. Do you think this is helping, by the way?
Well, it would not help me in the situation
I can imagine a full bidon going straight back in the car from Kelly at a moment.
Individuals, like I suppose, some riders they like that, the bit of motivation, push on there. But he is doing it a lot there. The director sportif there from the team, I think is Manuel Mori, an ex-bike rider. It looks like him, and every time he comes up he seems to be belting on the side of the door, but Majka cool as a cucumber, just continuing on, and what he doesn't like he just pitches back into the car again.
At speed. I think he's just picked up a UCI fine for ditching the bottle. It is in a populous area. I don't know whether that means you can get away with it, because it will be picked up. The wind has turned into a tailwind at this point, so that will be very welcome to them. Sean, it looks like our battle has been is drawing to a close here. Take a look at the gap, though. He's found 10 seconds. I don't think that's enough with what still remains here, but good on Steven Kruijswijk for having a good pitch in, and it seems as the fatigue starts to just hit here. They are sort of dispensing with wrappers and bottles ad infinitum. I'm actually wondering whether it might be the last feed area as well for some, so it might be that they're permitted to do so. One would hope so. When is the bottle cut off, Sean? Is it 15?
14.5
today.
Yes, 14.5, 15k. So it's the very beginning of the final climb. I presume when we get that board for the final tour category climb, from that point no more drinks.
There we are. I must admit, this pond looks a bit swampy, Sean. I don't think it's worth dipping your toes in. They may come out green.
Yes, it doesn't look very enticing.
I don't know, on a hot day,
Not even on a hot day.
There we are. 20.5 kilometres from home, and Kruijswijk, what a task. He will have worked almost equally as hard as Majka today, and maybe more so. You just don't know how the day has offered up its advantages. But taking advantage, Rafa Majka, and he went off with just over 87 kilometres to go in partnership with Fabio Aru. He had been. And if you count that duo as being a real launch for him, you could probably extend even more. But solo from about 87 kilometres. Absolutely remarkable. And he's got 90 seconds advantage with 20 k's to go. But a downhill run for home. So he's got one more climb to think about. Cars that come up. He doesn't want any bottles. He doesn't want any gels. But he's going to get the thoughts of the DS. Still giving out. Well, I guess at the end of the day, you can offer up your thoughts, but he won't be able to verbalise anything at the moment, Sean. He will be very much on the limit.
Yes, I think he's getting quite fatigued, and it's understandable when the amount of kilometres he's been out in the breakaway. Then with Aru, and on his own he's been for so many kilometres, it's going to start hitting him, and you can see 130 down to Kreiswick. I think it's just advantage to Kreiswick, but unfortunate for Stephen Kreiswick, the gap to Mike at the top of the last big climb, it was just that too much, and now in this final 19 kilometres, and there's quite a bit of that descent as well, and we can see where Mike is at the moment. It's up and down, it's a difficult section, and if it was tight where there was only that 30-40 seconds between the two leading riders, it could be a big battle, but I think Mike is going to have enough here to hold on with quite an advantage to take stage honours.
Certainly looks that way. And no great GC battle either, Sean, over the peaks, and maybe that's courtesy of the fatigue that's spread throughout the peloton, and also the great work that's been done by Intermarché Wanty. I think everyone's thought, you know what, today's not the battle day.
Yes, well, I think this climb, with the gradient not being anything major, it was always going to be a difficult one for the riders that need to attack, notably Miguel Angel Lopez, Mas, Bernal. Those guys, they need much greater gradients to try and create a difference. And against the Primož Roglič on this terrain, well, I don't think you have any chance at all unless you can isolate him. But we can see here, the Jumbo-Visma team are getting a free ride today, so yeah, they have all their manpower here to control the situation, and for that reason we haven't seen anything happen from the other challengers. But on this third category climb, you could see somebody trying to push on there and get onto that short descent into the finish, so we might see some action there. The interesting one is the chasing group there. We can see Brambilla. We'll pan back to it there, and we haven't seen them at all for a long time. There's Joan Pedro Lopez, who was at 10 minutes in the GC standings. He will make inroads in the general classification. It will be interesting to see what exactly the situation is behind the two leaders on the road.
Welcome back. This is the chase. Stephen Kreiswijk sits at just about a minute and a half down. We have the pursuers here, which is Group 3, getting a handle upon them right now. They sit, we believe, 2 minutes in front of the 6 minutes and 8. So just over 4 minutes down, we believe, as they stand at the moment. That was the latest time gap. And if that's the case, it means that JP Lopez of Trek, who sat at the beginning of the day at 10 minutes and 8 down, it means that he will still be around 8 minutes down in the general classification to old Christian Eiking, and about 6 minutes in arrears of Primož Roglič. So no damage done particularly there, Sean, if indeed those gaps are correct.
No, nothing major in the overall standings. So yeah, it's now a question of the group Intermarché Wanty continue on controlling it, and they'll be hoping that if there is some action on this small climb, they still have to get through, that their main man Eiking will be able to manage, and not lose any time. And I don't think, looking at yesterday, his main rival Guillaume Martin Cofidis at 54 seconds, did take a small bit of time from him yesterday, but on this run-in I don't think that the red jersey should be in any difficulty, so going to hold on for another day.
Indeed, you can see the three Cofidis riders just sitting in the middle of that string as we look at it, and so no advance by Guillaume Martin on to the leader, who is of course Odd Christian Eiking. We almost mention him in passing, Sean, but it's been a spectacular performance by Intermarché wanting to look after that jersey, and it'll be an 8th day in red and possibly a 9th, because we have a sprint day on stage 16. It's been outstanding by that team. They have had just such a good run in red.
Yes, well, it's been a dream, Vuelta, for them, and the performance they've had in this race, I think they wouldn't have had any dreams of doing this sort of a run. And we remember in the Giro as well, they won a stage in the very earlier part. It's their first year in World Tour level, and it's turning out to be an excellent year for them. The Tour of France was a bit disappointing. The director sportif, Hilaire van der Schuren, he was not happy with the way they were riding, not enough in the breaks, not active enough, but I think this Vuelta will calm all of that, and I think they will be really happy with the season. Whatever happens from here on, it will be a great season for the team.
And that great seasons, great performances, Sean, are reflected in funding, and Intermarché's decision to join Wanty in terms of sponsorship looks to have been a decision well placed, and it will ultimately mean that they are able to find extended funding with performances such as this. It's all part of the game.
Yes, and we're hearing that Intermarché, of course, the supermarket chain in Belgium, also in France, we're hearing that there's extra funding for the team coming from the French side.
Fantastic. Well, there you go. So the Belgian side of it, of the company, will be joined by the French side, and swell their coffers, which is fantastic. This man's going to be swelling with pride. He's a diminutive but powerful figure, is Ralph Maika. He's had a great deal of success, bronze medalist in the Olympic Games, we remind you as well. So it's not just the odd stage race he picks up, such as the Tour of Poland, Tour of Slovenia, very much sort of Eastern Bloc feel about it to the pole. But occasionally on Grand Tours, he has his day, and this is one of them. Sure, it's a spectacular one. He was coming back into great form, wasn't he, last year, making the podium on the Tirreno Adriatico. A super effort, but that was, and he's showing that at 31 years of age he can still pull it out. This was a very, very strong performance today.
Yes, well, he's a rider that has thrown up those performances during his career on a number of occasions. Of recent, maybe not getting the freedom, and we did see in the Tour of France this year, when he was riding for the yellow jersey, Pogacar, the final week, he was really excellent on those big mountain stages. He was there very much towards the end when they were finishing on the top of the mountain. So he is coming back into shape, and today he's just shown what talent he has got, and the way he can ride when he gets out into a breakaway. He can continue for many kilometres on his own. He did it in the Tour of France quite a number of years ago, but today's performance will go down as one of the great rides of his career.
Certainly will, and we will remember it fondly. That's one of the wonderful things about cycling, is you get these outstanding performances and they echo through your mind, Sean, well beyond the event itself.
Yes, well, these big performances, when they're solo performances, of course, you just think of them so easily, and when you talk about the big solo performances, Chris Froome's one in the Giro, of course, that was a one which will go down in history. But with Maika, I remember when he'd had the polka dot jersey, and he was winning stages in the Tour. I remember one year when he was out on his own, and the motorbike TV camera or photographers came up beside him, and he actually pulled from the motorbike. You probably remember that as well, Carlton.
I do.
And those days are ones that you always remember. And of course, the rider is much bigger again, because they are doing the performance.
Not a great time to have a puncture. That was Ciccone from Trek Segafredo, and in fact there's a little bit of pace about everyone today, and not long before we get to home. Bit of a compression as well by the red jersey group. They're finding more time, and if they were indeed worrying about the placement of JP Lopez up ahead, it looks like that gap is being closed down rapidly. They've found about a minute, and no surprise there'll be more strength back here. But all the names are together, as you can see. Haig coming through, just following on from Bernal and Adam Yates, you saw a moment ago. Jack Haig also within that pack for Bahrain victorious. And so I guess a quiet landing, Sean. It's almost like we've glid or glided down from the heady heights of the beginning of this day, where we really did take off remarkably. It was a busy start, Sean.
Yes, well, it was a very busy day, and a difficult day, and it's often the case where we see these big days and they really start out with such excitement, and then you get into the more interesting part, meaning the big mountain passes which we had today, and the race just gets into a pattern of settling, and then you have that break formed out front, and the peloton just ride at a certain pace and control the situation, and that's what we've got today. And you can only ride at such a rate for so far. You cannot continue on attacking as they were in the earlier part of the stage. Nobody is capable of doing that, and it's probably just gets a bit low during the stage. But this stage is being pretty an exciting one. Although we were expecting something to come from the main peloton, the GC contenders. Will we get that on this final climb here? It's difficult to see, but you never know. You have to be ready, and as you said, Carlton, you can see all the favourites pretty much to the front, ready in case there is somebody who want to try something to take a bit of time back.
Some of the open water swimmers here, and that seems like a very good idea. Certainly an awful lot better than that mountain pond that we saw a short while ago. They're enjoying themselves, Sean, and as well they might. This looks more inviting.
Yes, it does, although not majorly inviting, but still better than the pond we have seen at the top of that mountain.
There was still a bit of green down there, wasn't there? Yeah, if you're going to swim there, possibly don't take a sip. I'm not quite sure. 10.3 kilometres from home, and as you can see, we're on our final climb. It's not that serious, but the pace of these guys is, and to my mind, this is going to be the killing of any advance that Juan Pedro Lopez will have had, because I think they're within a short time they're going to find them. There is Brambilla, who suffered a puncture a few moments ago, so there can't be that much of a gap. He rode on still. I don't know whether he's had his puncture fixed and whether he's just calling for a bottle here. It's too late for a bottle. Maybe he's still got a technical issue, I don't know. They're riding this one in, Sean. I do fear for some of the riders who've been left out on the course today in terms of our time gaps. Let me just see if Dan Lloyd actually gave us, as promised. No, he didn't. He's a busy man.
No, I don't think that we're going to have any difficulty for the time delay, because we got 50-60 kilometres into the stage, and it was pretty much all together. And then we did see on the first climb of the day Duconi Quickstep were getting into what we see in the Tour of France with Mark Cavendish, Fabio Jakobsen. He had 2 or 3 riders from the Duconi team there around him, and a number of riders as well, and that's what they do. They just form a group there, they hope to have 25 or 30 riders, and if you have that sort of number, well then you ride the climb at a steady pace, make the descent very strong. On the flat sections then everybody contribute, unless they're somebody who is really dead, they're allowed to sit on the rear, but you're always encouraged to ride with the group and keep the gap to what they need to, and I don't think we will see anybody eliminated unless sickness or crashes, which we haven't heard about, but other than that it should be an okay day for all.
I must admit I'm starting now to worry about cramps. It always happens. We've seen riders tie up at moments such as this. I'm just hoping everyone's got the salts where they need to be, because there's a lot of salty jerseys and bib shorts out there. I'm finding things to worry about, Sean. It's because I really want Raf Micah to bring this one home.
Yes, well, I think there's no question about it. It's a done deal now. 149 and 3.8 kilometres at the top of this climb. Nothing serious. It's not anything of major gradient. So, and looking at him there, we can see he is still pretty okay. And then the final run to the line, it's a job done pretty much for him. Just stay safe. And he's a rider, as I've mentioned a number of times already. He's experienced, he knows what to do. Where if you had a young guy, a new pro out there, he might get a little bit carried away running to the finish and maybe make a mistake. But Micah, no, not at all.
Look at the storm clouds. I'm hoping that the rain does come in during the rest day, but we will be far away by the time that indeed we have that. We're waiting for the winner's time as he crosses the line to start working out the time cut-off point today. I think it would be an unlucky rider that finds himself off the back. But we've seen a few struggling right at the beginning of the day. Landa struggling within the day. Luis Leon Sanchez looked a bit second-hand earlier on, I'm afraid, and there are a few others as well that may well have been back to the medical car. We have an ever-rising roster of Ecuadorians leaving the race. Carapaz didn't finish yesterday. We have Cathebo, who pulled out this morning, and indeed Narvaez during the race, and we were speculating as to whether there might be a flight back to Ecuador at the end of today, or at least a party. They've had a great season, and it's a shame that they are no longer part of proceedings here, but it has been tiring. 3.2 kilometres from home, and this is your chase. This is that group: Bouchard, Kras, Nieve. Michael Storer would have actually, I'm sure, hoped for a third, making a hat-trick here. And as the camera pulls back, I think you will find the peloton is just about to edge into the bottom of your screen, which tells you all you need to know. Juan Pedro Lopez, there he is, well within range. He was 10 minutes and 8 down, Sean, and he might well be at that margin by the time we get to the line, because I imagine the stuffing's probably been knocked out of him by the pursuit of the pack.
Yes, well, it looked like an opportunity for the Trek Segafredo rider to maybe move in the GC standings. When we see the situation at 100 kilometres, 80 kilometres to the finish, it was a possibility that they would finish many minutes ahead. But yeah, the breakaway, they were just totally unorganised. Nobody wanted to commit and continue on riding at a very strong pace where they could pull out 6, 7, 8 minutes, and it was just one of those days that it was attack after attack. And then when Micah went away, a long ways out from the finish, it was totally disorganised in the rest of the breakaway, and for that reason, they've been pulled back. And a big effort, an opportunity lost, but you have to try, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And for Lopez, the Spanish rider, he's not going to move anywhere in the GC. He's going to be stuck in that position 16th in the overall standings.
Well, job well done then. There's no encroachment into Odd Christian Eiking's jersey, and here we are. They're going to get absorbed. There's no podium up for grabs for them. They've got there's Chris Hamilton up the road. Storer just drifts out into vision here, having been screened by Jeffrey Bouchard, who gave it a good old go today. We're used to saying that from AG2R Citroën, I must admit. But Rafa Micah, what a joy this is to see. Poland produced some great riders. They have done historically, Sean, ever since the peace races. They where quite often visitors would end up in pieces, I might say. The Poles have maintained their cycling greats. Even in the years of the Iron Curtain, we had some spectacular riders, not least in the Olympics, of course. They always rode beyond themselves, I thought, Poland, and Rafa Majka has done precisely the same thing today.
Yes, well, when you go back to the time of the peace race and you go back further, the Tour of Britain milk race, which was a one the older generation will remember. The teams that were coming, Poland, Czechoslovakia, all of those nations, they were the strongest nations, and they dominated that race for many years, many times. And I remember taking part in my first milk race. Those guys, the way they were riding, compared to what we were used to, back in Ireland and in the UK, they were just a level away ahead of us. And now we see the number of Polish riders and all those nations in the latter years. They have quite a number of very, very talented riders, but they always had.
They always had, and their ability to attack. They were very hardcore cyclists, I think it's fair to say, Sean. They rode without compromise, and I think that sense has passed through Polish cycling, and we've seen it today.
Well, I think it's an opportunity, when you come from the countries where the cycling is not majorly popular, although now in Poland, with the Tour of Poland and the riders doing so well for many years. But in the earlier days, it would be something like coming from Ireland, and we hadn't had a big champion for a number of years. It was a huge opportunity, and I think it gave you that drive, that hunger to be successful, and that is very important, because you need to have that drive, you need to have that hunger, and when you have got that, and if you've got a certain amount of talent, you can do great things.
There you go. Steven Kruijswijk today. This is a great ride by him. It's just that there was one rider who had what it took, and that's a hard thing to swallow on a day like this, Sean. 1,200 metres until he gets to the top of this mountain, and he'll look over the top to the pastures that lie ahead of him, and it'll be almost like he's looking at the land of milk and honey, I am certain, by the time he gets to the peak here, because it'll be a downhill run to home, and it will feel like a job well done, I think, for Rafa Majka in more ways than one. You have to be in the right place at the right time, but more than that, Sean, you have to ride clever, and indeed just factor in your drive when you need to, and Rafa Majka's ridden a perfect race today.
Yes, well, I think Rafa Majka would have came to this Vuelta with the idea of getting an opportunity to go for a stage victory, but it will all depend on the leader, David de la Cruz, the Spanish rider here in this race, who is still up there in the GC, just over 7 minutes, but he is being given the opportunity, and he's produced results on the day. He's come up with an excellent performance, and that's what these talented riders, these class riders can do. When you look at the men were in the breakaway today, there were so many riders there that you could say he could win this stage here today. When the breakaway looked like it was definitely going to go all the way, but Mike is the one to take it up early. That also, it takes quite a lot to hit out early in the day. When you talk about the kilometres he's been out there, just to do that, it just takes a rider that with a lot of strong mentality.
Louis Meintjes just tagging along for the ride here. Is that De La Cruz who's just decided to stretch his legs? So De La Cruz goes, Meintjes on the back of him. This is small beans, you might say, to get back at Primož Roglič. That's the ultimate idea. And they're pushing on. They'd like a gap. And with 5.9 kilometres, at least they're asking the question, Sean. I wonder what the response will be.
Well, I think De La Cruz, we see him doing this a number of times already, and you ask yourself, what's the point in doing it, because he's not going to gain anything. We did hear from Nicholas Roach on another day when he was with us that he doesn't like the descent, so you maybe would, that is the reason. But here there's not much of descent, and he's going to make an effort, and we can see, it's just coming across slowly from the rear here with Menkes just going to sit on here. He's not going to ride with him because he have got the red jersey behind, so he's just patrolling things, and you can see that Intermarché want to just continue on to set their pace as they have been doing for so long today.
Well, De La Cruz could have moved up a position. He sits behind Louis Menkes overall by only a margin, Sean, of 4 seconds, and so that's why Louis Menkes is suddenly just drifting over and saying, no you don't, you're not having my position in the general classification. There we go.
Menkes was following Guillaume Martin yesterday, and he's a long ways up in the GC standings. So Menkes is the man who is marking the attacks here and trying to just nullify them really by sitting on.
Good work. This man has managed to find himself, Rafa Majka, 3 more points in his King of the Mountains Jersey Challenge. How much freedom he gets deeper into this race, I guess, depends on De La Cruz's ambitions, but it may well be that he's off the leash, in which case Rafa Majka will be starting to think about that polka dot jersey, you can be sure. Here is Louis Menkes at the moment, just pushing on ever so slightly. They've got company from Caja Rural, who are busy today and not happy at all that the breakaway seemed to have gone without them. In fact, it was the very fact that Caja Rural had not been included in the breakaway, Sean, that accounted for the lot of pace and the killing of the first incarnation of the break.
Yes, it was good to see that we see Caja Rural getting involved, and I think Movistar were very content that they were, because they needed them to control that situation.
LMH just pushing on, I think it is, and they're starting to probe here, Sean. A little bit of fracturing. Roglic alive to the threat. Movistar, I think, at least want to show some willing here, especially as the run into town on a Sunday evening. Finishing a little bit earlier today, and that is because there's a whole load of football to cram in on Spanish television a little bit later on. It's the same every Sunday, to be fair. So yeah, Adam Yates though just showing his legs. I guess it's an opportunity just to stretch your legs. If you've just been riding tempo all day, Sean, a moment like this is kind of welcome, really, just to break the monotony.
Yes, I think they just want to get the day finished with, and push on, and maybe some of the riders, the Spanish football, maybe they want to watch it on TV. So that's the reason we see some of the Movistar riders starting to appear here. But nothing major going to happen. You can see Menkes is just setting a pace on the front, and you can see that the rest are coming across here, and it's going to be all back together for the descent.
There we are. The only person who's suffering here is old Christian Eiking, and the man he's looking at just ahead of him is Guillaume Martin. It would be cruel if there were any big gaps that opened up between the red jersey and nearest man to him, Guillaume Martin. Primož Roglic safely ensconced or implanted within this group. Sepkus doing the job of policeman yet again. Adam Yates is looking sprightly today. He's having another go, Sean.
Yes, he is, and will he be able to put anybody under pressure? We can see there, they're all following the wheel here. Lopez in the wheel, Kus there just in the wheel. Everybody in position there, but it's a big attack by Yates here, and it's going to shell some of the riders, but will it really put any of the GC men in difficulty?
That's the question. Here is the red jersey on the back of old Christian Eiking towards the rear ends. That was Rojas we've just seen, and struggling to keep with it is Vlasov by the looks of things, who doesn't want to get caught out at a moment such as this. Thinning down, I think you might say, Sean, but it looks like to no avail. But you never know. That group doesn't include Yates, who has actually pinged off. Nearest to him was Miguel Angel Lopez, who began to wonder whether this was worth the candle. Yates himself sits at 4 minutes and 49, so he's got his own teammate Bernal ahead of him, and then Jack Haig at 3:25. So I don't know. Every second counts, I guess you might say, and sometimes on Grand Tours, almost lethally so for some of your ambitions. Old Christian Eiking staying with this, Sean. He's done a good job. Here's a man who's just pointing to the heavens.
Yes, two men who have done a good job. Micah has done an excellent ride here today, but we can see Eiking is just in that group there, and Adam Yates, of course, on the overall standings, over 4 minutes and 49, but on Roglic he's at 3:13, so it's not all over yet, because things can change in this final week of the Vuelta when we get back on the road again on Monday after our rest day tomorrow. Every second might count in the end of the day, so if Yates can pull back a bit of time here today, he has a rest day tomorrow, of course, so it's going to be an interesting one. Will he be able to hold on out there?
Well, I don't know whether he's tightening his shoes up or loosening them off, to be honest. Probably the latter. An advantage of 1 minute and 37 over the nearest man to him, which is Kruijswijk. They have started just to push on and entertain themselves almost, as well as us. The red jersey group, you can see the red jersey just sitting in front of the white jersey of Egan Bernal as it stands. We do see Guillaume Martin actually just towards the fore, wheel 4 of this group that's being led by Kuss. They're chasing Yates. Big left-hander here. There's a right-hander coming up in a few moments' time. This is for Rafa Majka, who's going to bring this one home. Beautifully so as well. Oh my goodness. How much time has he been out there today? Well, I know the distance of just over 87 kilometres, but 4 hours and 50 in the saddle is going to hurt, and it may well hurt a few as well in arrears of these guys. Let's see, 4 hours 50 minutes and 51 minutes I should say, and Rafa Majka is now starting to think about how to celebrate. He's got a couple of twists and turns, but this race today had so many incarnations of a breakaway, and in the end it was to be last man standing. What a great man he turns out to be. Rafa Majka is going to take this win here. He can think about every which way to celebrate if he wishes. And look at that, Shawnee. He looks as fresh as a daisy, and considering the distance that he has put into today and the effort, he's had it all. Tactically, it was absolutely superb, and Rafa Majka takes this magnificent stage 15 of La Vuelta. Well, yes. Chapeau to him, Sean.
Yes, well, a really good performance here, and in the final, of course, he was never under any pressure, so no need to really push on and having to dig deep with a rider or a number of riders coming up from behind and finishing off the stage there with a win, looking comfortably.
There we are. Time limit today is 5 hours and 55, so in an hour and 4. Thanks to Dan Lloyd, who's busy doing his calculations, and a well-earned soft drink for a hard man. Rafa Majka, genius at work. We saw the best of him today, Sean, and I feel like we haven't seen the last of him.
No, I think with this performance here, it will be interesting in the final week, and it depends on what sort of freedom he gets from the UAE Team Emirates, because David de la Cruz, he's their GC man, but there's other riders there who should be able to look after him, and Majka, I'd not be surprised if we see him in the breakaway on some of the more mountainous, difficult days in this final week.
It's going to happen, Sean. You kind of feel it, don't you? Tim Kruijswijk comes in now. 1 minute and 27 in arrears. Chris Hamilton should be next from a DSM team that up to this point have been absolutely magnificent. Well, there was a bit of a shakedown here, as you can see, but all the favourites look like they're going to come in together again, Sean.
Yes, well, we can see it's Jumbo-Visma who are chasing. Yates, he's still out in front here, but it looks like he's going to take quite a number of seconds here. We'll have to see on the line, and you can see now it's just a fight for the podium here between the rest of the breakaway men.
Gosh, the DSM kit really does show the salt, Sean. It's almost come home looking grey here, but a bright performance yet again from Chris Hamilton. He gets a stage podium, and yet another stellar result for Team DSM. Good work, Sean.
Yes, well, a good ride there, and DSM, they set out with numbers, but unfortunately just were not able to finish it off. And but on the podium for Christopher Hamilton here, as we can see Yates coming in, he's going to take quite a few seconds, because we can see there the peloton of main favourites. However, the peloton not in view, but maybe 10-12 seconds max.
Let's have a look. He crossed the line at 2:42, and this will be important. And Odd Christian Eiking coming up here, just taking it to the barriers moderately. There he is, the red jersey comes across the line with all our main contenders. Well, Adam Yates then finds himself more than a handful of seconds there, Sean. That was worth doing.
Yes, it was, and it didn't look like that it was going to happen, because on the top of the climb there was quite a few of the Jumbo-Visma riders. They did come back here to the front and start riding, but still he probably took 8 seconds, maybe 10 seconds maximum there. But the position he's in the overall standings, it could become of importance in the final week.
He actually took 15 seconds, Sean, which was quite remarkable. Ciccone was the next man across the line. Yates home in 2:42, as I mentioned, and 2:57 was Ciccone, and of course the group including Roglic and the leader, Christian Eiking. One man head and shoulders above everyone, despite his height, is this man. Fantastic. Raf Majka, stage winner. So pleased to be able to say it, Sean. And it was a long time previewed today, wasn't it? He was out there an awfully long time.
Yes, well, it was a long affair for him out in front for so many kilometres. And when he did hit out on his own when he left Aru, the question was, would he be able to go all the way? It was looking to be a difficult one, because the breakaway behind, there was a lot of riders capable of getting out of that, and I was concerned that in the end he mightn't have enough to be able to go all the way. But yeah, no problem, just a powerful ride, never seemed to weaken as he got into the final kilometres, meaning the final 20-30 kilometres on that final long climb. An excellent performance.
Confirmation then of how they came home. Majka ahead of Kruijswijk by a margin of 1 minute and 27. Chris Hamilton doing a job for DSM to get on the day's podium. Adam Yates, great to see that precocious push at the end, and he found 15 seconds on the group that included, of course, Primož Roglic. Ciccone, Christian Eiking the leader, Grosshartner, Kuss, De La Cruz, Mas, Lopez just behind, ahead of Jack Haig, Vlasov. Roglic was 14th today, but at the same time as Ciccone. Egan Bernal finishing just with Roglic. Gino Mada was there, as well as Guillaume Martin, the man who would be king, but at the moment is looking enviously, I think, at Odd Christian. Meintjes finishing in 18th place today, ahead of Sam Oomen, Remy Rojas and Sergio Luis Henao. Great day's racing today. I know it may well have been a quiet finish, but sometimes a quiet man can go very loud, and Rafa Majka did exactly that today. It was a stunning stage in terms of its battling throughout. It's just that the war didn't happen at the very end. Odd Christian Eiking leads this race by a margin of 54 seconds. No change there for him. Roglic, 1 minute and 36 in arrears. And that's the rest of your top 10 as it stacks up for now, as we head for the rest day. Rafa Majka, king of several hills and some mountains as well. Well, this was the moment, with just over 87 kilometres to go, that Rafa Majka decided he didn't want any company. Certainly didn't want the company of Fabio Ru. I wasn't offering him up too many turns, so he thought, well, you know what, I'll just take it myself. And he did. Away he skittled, and we were wondering and worrying whether it was a distance too far, because there were some great quality riders behind. Still in a fighting force, but he was a force of one, Rafa Majka, and he just started, as the boards were displaying to him, to believe, and so was his team. Well, the mountains points started to get racked up by him. Indeed, he's ignited his challenge in the King of the Mountains jersey competition. Still going up. He was absolutely right. That was the gap they were talking about. A gap he held to the line. In the end, 1 minute and 27 was his winning margin. Sorry, stage classification saw Micah finishing ahead of Steven Kruijswijk. We'll be hearing from him in a few moments' time. Second place for Kruijswijk. Good work by him, keeping it honest. And Chris Hamilton in third place as well. Another great finish for DSM. Adam Yates pushed on at the very last and found 15 seconds on his rivals in the overall classification. Good news for him. Let's hear from Kruijswijk, nearest man to Rafa Micah today.
Steven Kruijswijk joined of Jumbo-Visma. Steven, all the way, all the routes, you were just behind Micah. You just couldn't catch him. Was that
well, it was really difficult day.